long before Mists of Pandaria. So get out
I
of
thought
here.
this Mario Kart 64 screenshot was AI because that logo looks exactly like the Marlboro cigarette brand. But it turns out that this screenshot is actually taken from the Japanese version of the game. I guess Mario Ro is a brand of cigarettes in the Mushroom Kingdom. But to make sure that Mario Kart 64 got an E for everyone rating, Nintendo had to get rid of that. And they changed it into this, Mario Star? I thought this Mario Kart 64 screenshot was AI because that logo looks exactly...
Did you just fucking chat GPT a gene joke? By the way, I read... That is not fair, man. Did you just fucking chat GPT a gene joke? By the way, I read... That is not fair, man. Did you just fucking chat GPT a gene joke? By the way, I read...
I made a video of me rotating the Xbox 360 while there was a disc inside and people freaked out in the comments. They said it was really bad and it could damage the console. And they even got Project Gotham Racing 3 going. Great game, by the way. But let me just show you what happens. It's really not a big deal. Just rotate the console. The game will still keep playing and it'll be like nothing happened. See, it's fine. I made a video of me rotating the Xbox 360.
Becky, please don't skip. Okay, sure.
Hey, wait.
I think that's mine.
No, it's not. Ours is still in the garden.
Becky, please don't skip. Okay, sure.
Hey, wait.
I think that's mine.
No, it's...
I was watching Shroud yesterday. Blood fucking did trade off us. Opened, accepted gifts from his poor viewers. Shameless. Shameless. I'm gonna do it today myself. 118,000. I was watching Shroud yesterday. Blood fucking did trade off us. Opened, accepted gifts from his poor viewers. Shameless. Shame.
Coming.
Oh!
Why would I spend $50 on grocery produce when I...
You can just not die and farm. You will climb. You will get the diamond.
Like, just by doing absolutely nothing in a game. Pick a control mage, farm the mid lane, do absolutely nothing, don't die, be stable, you climb.
Yes, if you can farm 10 CS a minute and not die and take good trades and ward and lean, reset well, and understand where your jungler is and be there at neutral objectives, yeah, you can probably get to diamond, but that's very hard to do. So inherently embedded within someone that is doing those skills already is actually very good at the game, and they have a very expanded mental stack. So to be able to farm that well, you would have to have good wage management, good matchup understanding, good trading. You'd have to know when to reset. You'd have to know where your jungler is. You'd have to have good threat assessment. You would have to know when the next neutral objective is spawning and be there. You'd have to do all these things. That already inherently makes you a diamond player.
Good evening, you ready to order?
Give me 1 minute. I'm a picky eater.
Yeah, you picky. You picky everything, that's your problem. Can I have 4 cheeseburgers and 2 large fries?
Okay. And what would you and the kids like?
Hola, can I get a horchata, por favor?
Do you want ice with that?
Ice. Run, mi amigos, ice is coming, andale.
Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel.
More water, sir?
It's ma'am, bitch. It's like a knife in the heart every time. I want a refund now.
I'm sorry to say this, sir, but we have diagnosed you with stage 4 cancer.
Double it and give it to the next person.
Hey, are you an American citizen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, prove it. Speak some English.
Ballerina cappuccina, borbandino crocodilo, tung 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 rahur.
Okay, I'm sorry, sir. You can go.
Yeah, I'll take the pasta, the porterhouse, and margarita.
Perfect. A watermelon, fried chicken, and a Kool-Aid.
What did you just say, Nick?
You have been found guilty on 8 counts of scamming. Your sentence is a 15-minute shower.
No, Your Honor, please, not that. Please, Your Honor, I am begging you.
Oh my God, that's fucking crazy, dude.
Good evening, you ready to order?
Give me 1 minute. I'm a picky eater.
Here are some sports and competitions that are originated in Finland. Finland is the promised land of heavy metal, so of course they have Air Guitar World Championships. The competition has been organized since 1996 and is today internationally recognized. And adding to the Finnish love of metal, they of course also have heavy metal knitting. The World Championship. I'll just let this speak for itself. This one I'm sure some of you already know. It started out as a hobby amongst children, but hobby horsing has seen an incredible rise in popularity in recent years. In fact, it's gotten so popular now that national championships are now organized. And moving on, I had a thought. A lot of sauna and a bunch of booze must lead to something, right? It sure did. Enter the rubber boot throwing World Championship. It is what it is. You throw a rubber boot. And the Finnish love for throwing does not end with boots. Let's just say there's a reason that the Finns made Nokia cell phones indestructible. They also have phone throwing. World Championships. Also, your country might have bested the Finns in football tournaments, but why be good at regular old flat ground football when you have swamp football? It's still a World Championship, because why the f*** not? And last, but certainly not least, the World Championship of wife carrying. It's simple. You carry your wife to the finish line. And of course this is taken very seriously since first place wins the person they carried's weight in beer. I promise I'm not making this up. Here are some
Chen was joined by his energetic niece Lily as they set out on a journey across the Valley of the Four Winds. For Chen, it was a chance to reconnect with his family's roots and learn what had become of the Storm Stout Brewery, his family's ancestral home. For Lily, it was a thrill of discovery and a chance to explore a homeland she'd only heard stories about. Along the way, we meet local characters like Mudmug, a laid-back brewmaster whose peculiar wisdom and easygoing nature perfectly captured the valley's charm. His simple joys, rice wine, rivers and friends, offered a counterpoint to the world's growing chaos. In many ways, Mudmug reminded us why this land was worth protecting. One of the standout moments comes not in battle, but in memory. In the scenario quest Broken Dreams, players step into Chen's path as he recounts the day he returned to the Storm. What he found wasn't a warm welcome, but rejection. His distant relative Uncle Gao, now the self-appointed steward of the brewery, shunned him simply for bearing the Storm Stout name. Gao's bitterness ran deeper than Chen expected, and his brewing efforts had left the once proud brewery overrun and neglected. The experience is laced with family tension and quiet heartbreak. Even in a valley known for its peace, pride and legacy could still divide blood. Yet once the dust had cleared and the family brewery was back in good hands, Gao's bitterness began to fade. He shared stories of the family's roots, pointed Chen and Lily toward their ancestral shrine, and even joined Chen in brewing new ale. For Chen, it was a sobering reminder that coming home isn't always comforting, but healing can still follow confrontation. And for players, it added emotional depth to a story that up to that point had felt light and carefree. The valley also introduced the tiller, humble farmers reclaiming their land one patch of soil at a time. But the serenity of the valley was soon shattered. The once peaceful serpent spine, a symbol of the land's isolation, was breached. The mantid, an ancient race of insectoid creatures, launched a full-scale assault, flooding the valley with their destructive presence. The collapse of the wall marked the first true moment of urgency in the valley. What was once a retreat into calmness and tradition was now a battleground. The mantid invasion represented the external threat that was slowly creeping into Pandaria, and the valley was no exception. As the mantid pushed further into the land, it forced players alongside Chen, Li Li, and the rest of the Pandaren to rise up in defense. The peaceful farming life they had embraced was no longer enough to hold back the tide of war. In many ways, this event was a stark reminder that the looming war and its consequences were never truly far away, even in the idyllic landscapes of Pandaria. It also served to deepen the stakes of the valley. What was once about personal exploration and family connection now involved defending the land and its people with a truly primal force. And just as quickly as the storm had arrived, it faded. The mantid forces were driven back, the serpent spine was repaired, and the valley's peaceful pace slowly returned. But the damage was done, not just to the wall, but to the illusion that Pandaria could remain untouched by the chaos of the outside world. In the end, the Valley of the Four Winds wasn't just about farming and finding peace. It was about resilience. The resilience of its people, its land, and even its enemies. After the heartbreak of the Jade Forest and the warmth of the valley, peace felt possible. But just south of those golden fields, the drums of war grew louder. In Krasarang Wilds, the tone shifted. The lush jungle became a staging ground. The Horde and the Alliance establishing beachheads, digging trenches, and preparing for open war. Where the valley showed what was worth protecting, Krasarang reminded us how quickly it could all be lost. This was the quiet before escalation. The moment Pandaria began to brace for the storm. As the fighting intensified, players pushed deeper into Pandaria's rugged heartlands, where tradition and turmoil intertwined. Further north lies Kunlai Summit, a land of mountains, monasteries, and old traditions. Here, a war slows, replaced by reflection, triumph, and spiritual awakening. Players climbed towards the snowy peaks, passing scattered villages and remote temples, witnessing signs of lingering Shah corruption and unrest among displaced Yongle, nomadic tribes driven eastward by mantid aggression. These encounters reveal how Pandaria's balance is unraveling, and how the player's arrival is part of a much larger story. At the Temple of the White Tiger, players face a sacred trial before Shue, one of the 4 August Celestials, to earn passage to the Vale of Eternal Blossoms. Prince Anduin briefly appears here too, accompanied by Sunwalker Desmond, reinforcing his quiet commitment to peace and foreshadowing the role he'll play in the chapters ahead. It's here that whispers of Pandaria's deeper legacy begin to surface. The tale of Emperor Xiaohao, the last ruler of a united Pandaria. Long ago, Xiaohao undertook his own spiritual journey across these peaks, seeking to purge himself of anger, doubt, fear, and pride. His story wasn't just legend, it was prophecy, a warning, and a mirror. In the face of war, his example offered a quieter path, but true strength comes not from conquest, but from clarity. The story descends into the war-torn valleys of the Taolong Steppes, a land shaped by conflict and shadow. Once hidden behind the serpent spine, this region marks a turning point where Pandaria's internal struggles collide with outside invaders. Taolong is home to the Shadow Pan, Pandaria's elite defenders, stoic warriors who've guarded the land against invaders and inner darkness for generations. When players arrive, the Shadow Pan are under siege, pushed to their limits by mantid incursions fueled by the Shah of Fear. We step into their world at its lowest point and help them begin to rise again. Though the Shadowpan Monastery is technically in Kunlai, its story resonates here. In the dungeon, players confront the Shah of Violence and witness how even the most disciplined minds have been poisoned. Cleansing the monastery was a reminder that even the strongest can break. Taranzu, leader of the Shadowpan, wrestles with that burden. He stands as one of Pandaria's most compelling figures. Haunted, hardened, but never broken. His arc, from measured control to near collapse and back again, is one of Mr. Pandaria's emotional anchors. While we're in Taolong, we also take on the Shah of Hatred. It's been messing with the minds of the Pandaren, turning them against each other. We step in and put a stop to it. By the time we leave Taolong, the war feels closer. We've seen how deeply fear and hatred have taken root, and how thin the line is between protector and monster. The struggle continues into the Dread Wastes. As players venture deeper into Pandaria, the journey takes a dark turn into a harsh, unforgiving landscape consumed by shadow and fear. Once the proud heartland of the Mountain Empire is now fractured by civil war, a kingdom devoured from within. The Shah of Fear looms largely, its influence twisting minds, breeding paranoia, and driving the mountain to madness. What was once order has become chaos, and the land itself feels hostile. The player quickly realizes that the true battle isn't between the Horde and the Alliance, it's against the darkness consuming Pandaria itself. At the heart of this turmoil is Grimlook the Windfinger, a disgraced mounted warrior who refuses to bow to the madness. Through a series of quests and cutscenes, players witness his personal struggle for redemption and his determination to restore honor to his people. As the rebellion gains traction, players join forces with the Mountain's resistance, confronting not just corrupted creatures, but the trauma and fear that fuel their downfall. The campaign to reclaim the Mountain's capital is a turning point, showing that even in the bleakest corners, hope still lingers. Cutscenes and quest moments reinforce the zone's heavy themes: fear, sacrifice, and the fragility of hope. And just beyond the desolation lies the Vale of Eternal Philosophy, a place once untouched, now next in line. Once a serene land watched over by the August Celestials, its ancient temples now bear the scars of war and corruption. Amid the fighting, the Shah of Fear spreads its corruption. In the Terrace of Endless Spring Raid, players confront its lingering darkness. Within this turmoil, tension between key figures grows. Prince Andy Prince stands for peace and diplomacy, striving to guide the world towards compassion. His idealism directly opposes Garrosh Hellscream, whose ruthless ambition drives him to harness the Shah's power, escalating the war and destabilizing even his own Horde. Here, all paths begin to converge, and the full cost of the conflict becomes clear. Meanwhile, a shadow moves behind the scenes: Rathian, the Black Prince. Through a secretive questline that spans the entire expansion, he recruits the player to aid in forging a legendary cloak, not for himself, but as a weapon for what's coming next. His trials push the player to their limits, slaying powerful foes, gathering Titan artifacts, and proving their worth as Azeroth's future protector. Rathian's cryptic visions and final warnings made one thing clear: Pandaria was just the beginning. A greater storm was coming, one that would eventually take shape in the Legion expansion. With the discovery of Pandaria still fresh, patch 5.1 Landfall escalated the conflict into a cold war of sabotage, spycraft, and strategic escalation. It introduced Operation Shield Wall and the Dominance Offensive, faction-specific stories told through daily quest hunts. Each day felt like a new chapter in an unfolding arms race. Players uncovered assassination plots, sabotage missions, and espionage reports, giving the war a sense of constant momentum. Much of this chapter centres on the Horde's bold offensive. Under Garrosh Hellscream, the Horde launches an aggressive campaign to control Pandaria's wilds, expanding their reach with new forward bases along the southern coast. Garrosh's iron will and refusal to negotiate set a tone of relentless conquest. The Alliance, meanwhile, plays a reactive role, digging in to defend their footholds and uncover the scope of Garrosh's ambitions. While this patch moves more heavily into the Horde's narrative, tension between factions becomes undeniable, foreshadowing the war to come. But while the factions fight for ground, something older and far more dangerous stirs in the mist. The Isle of Thunder, long shrouded in storms and sealed away, emerges in patch 5. Once the seat of Lei Shen, the Thunder King, its ruins crackle with ancient modes of power. Now resurrected, Lei Shen seeks to reclaim his empire and enslave all of Pandaria. Players land on the island amidst crashing waves and lightning-filled skies. Unlike many patch zones, players don't just watch events unfold, they push the campaign forward. Daily quests evolve with progress. Lorewalker Cho guides players through Pandaria's forgotten history, and slowly, the full story of Lei Shen and the Mogu is revealed. At the heart of this conflict is the Throne of Thunder reign, a sprawling, stormlit gauntlet where players face Lei Shen and his generals. The battles are fierce, but the real impact lies in what the Thunder King represents: a return to authoritarian rule, unchecked power, and the ancient evils that Pandaria tried to bury. Hidden deep within the raid lies a secret encounter, Ra'Den, a mysterious guardian bound by the Titans. His appearance hinted at ancient Titan secrets, a glimpse beyond Pandarian borders, and a reminder that this story was part of something far greater. Though not central to the main plot, Varden adds a sense of scale and mystery that elevates the entire raid. Through quests and exploration, players piece together the Mogu's brutal legacy, their creations, their rebellion, and the dark truths Lei Shen hopes to restore. Patch 5.2 doesn't just deepen Pandaria's role, it warns us that the greatest threats aren't always the ones marching under banners. Throughout these events, Rathian continues to guide players behind the scenes. His questline runs parallel to the Thunder King campaign, hinting at greater cosmic forces and a looming destiny for Azeroth. But the rising conflict was only a prelude. The chaos within the Horde was about to boil over. As rebellion sparked into open war, Anduin Wryn's role as a symbol of peace became more important than ever. When Garrosh discovered the Divine Bell, an ancient Mogul artifact meant to amplify pride and rage, he saw a chance to forge a stronger, more merciless Horde. Anduin stood in his way. Their confrontation in Kunlai became a turning point. Garrosh's pride led to the Bell's destruction, with Anduin nearly dying in the process. For Vol'jin, rebellion wasn't political, it was personal. During the Horde's campaign in Krasarang Wilds, Garrosh, increasingly paranoid, sent Vol'jin on a mission into dangerous territory. It was a trap. Kor'kron assassins ambushed him under direct orders. Left for dead, Vol'jin was rescued in secret by Chen Stormstout and the Shadow Pact. When he returned, he wasn't as a general, but as a rebel. He liberated the Echo Islands, reclaimed Razor Hill, and ignited a movement that quickly spread. The Darkspear Rebellion became a rallying cry for the rest of the Horde. Lorthamar, Bane, even Orcish clans began to question Garrosh's rule. The Gob Squad would also join Vol'jin, proof that discontent ran deep. With the Horde fractured, King Varian Wryn saw an opening. Though cautious, the Alliance offered open support, espionage, sabotage, disruption. As the rebellion spread, Garrosh doubled down. He fortified Orgrimmar, empowered the Kor'kron, and purged the scent of brutality. Pride became paranoia. The Barons erupted. The battlefield Barons were invaded. Players cut supply lines, sabotaged warbands, and fueled the uprising. The world was hurtling towards a final reckoning, and Garrosh was ready. Deep in the Veil of Eternal Blossoms, he unearthed a grotesque relic, the Heart of Yashiraj, a remnant of an old god. It pulsed with malevolent power. Taranzu, Pandaria's moral voice, condemned him, called it desecration, but Garrosh saw only strength. The Veil, once serene, was defiled. Its waters blackened, its temples twisted. This was the point of no return. The final blow was coming, and it would come from both sides. The Alliance and the Darkspear Rebellion stood at the gates of Orgrimmar, not as allies, but as survivors of the same betrayal. Orgrimmar had become a fortress. Garrosh had dug beneath Ragefire Chasm, carving a dark empire around the heart of Yashiraj. Players stormed the city through Kor'kron warbands, twisted war machines, and horrors wrought by the heart's power. Even former allies stood in the way. General Nazgûl, still loyal to the Horde's ideals, fell with honour. After defeating the Shah of Pride, one detail stood out. Gorehowl, Garrosh's axe, lay abandoned. He wasn't following Grom's path anymore. He had rejected it. Garrosh now wielded Zalato, a corrupted echo of Gorehowl born from the heart's madness. As players descended deeper, the grotesque scale of Garrosh's vision came into focus. This wasn't politics, it was madness. The Paragon of the Plaxi, ancient allies, joined Garrosh, pledging themselves to Yashiraj. They didn't join him out of madness, but admiration. In Garrosh, they saw not a tyrant, but a kindred spirit. The final battle was brutal. Empowered by the heart, Garrosh fought with fury, not to win, but to reshape the world. And he lost. Broken and beaten, Garrosh lay before Thrall, who raised Doomhammer to end it. But Varian Wryn stopped him. This wasn't about vengeance, it was about justice. Jaina called for the dismantling of the Horde. Anduin pleaded for peace. Taranzu, wounded but resolute, insisted Garrosh be judged, not slain. And so, both factions agreed. Garrosh would stand trial in Pandaria. But there was one more surprise. The Horde needed a new warrior, and Thrall had to reclaim the mantle. He knelt before Vol'jin. A troll, a rebel, a leader of the broken. Vol'jin became the first non-orc war chief, a sign that the Horde could change, but also that it had much to heal. The Veil remained scarred, the world shaken. The war was over, but the wounds would take far longer to fade. At the Temple of the White Tiger, Garrosh stood trial before the August Celestials. Horde Alliance heroes bore witness. Justice, not vengeance, was gone. And then came the twist. On the Timeless Isle, a land where time bends and destiny frays, Rathian and Kairos Dormu intervene. Garrosh escaped, vanishing into an alternate Draenor. And as one tyrant slipped through time, another soul found peace. Emperor Xiaohao, long gone, finally let go. His spirit dissolved into mist, the last breath of a land forced to stay home. One ruler had embraced pride, the other had learned to let go. In the aftermath, Lord of the show offered his final reflection. His words were not about conquest or power or even victory. They were about stories and the choices we leave behind. The war was over, but the next was already being written. I'm not the best storyteller, so consider this my personal retelling of Mists of Pandaria. I tried my best to capture the heart of the expansion, but no doubt there is things that I've missed. If you want a full lore deep dive, I've linked Novel's fantastic video in the description. Many saw the Kung Fu Panda comparisons as a bit of a joke when the expansion was first revealed, which led to skepticism about its tone. But beneath the surface level memes was something much deeper. Mists of Pandaria wasn't about a cosmic threat. It slowed things down, made us reflect, and told a story about saving ourselves, not the world. At the heart of the expansion were the Shah, physical manifestations of negative emotions like fear, anger, doubt, and despair. These weren't just monsters to fight, they were miracles, symbols of the internal battles both Pandaria and its invaders had to face. Every corrupted zone, every moment of emotional unrest reinforced one of the expansion's central themes, that power without balance leads to ruin. That unchecked emotion, even in heroes, can breed devastation. Taran Zu, the leader of the Shadow Pan, was the ever-present voice of caution. Someone who saw early on damage the Alliance Accord will bring into Pandaria's fragile balance. His presence grounded the expansion's themes in character-driven moments, reminding us that restraint was just as heroic as action. But Mists of Pandaria wasn't just a story about internal battles and personal growth. It was also a story about a larger conflict, the faction war. Unlike the often straightforward and heavily politicized wars in later expansions, the faction conflict in Mists was nuanced and emotionally charged, and for me, it was the best they've ever done it. It portrayed the Horde and the Alliance not simply as enemies, but as two sides grappling with their own pride, honour, and scars from past wars. This faction war added emotional weight and complexity to the expansion's narrative. It wasn't just about conquering land or defeating a common enemy, but about understanding the cost of endless conflict and the struggle to find balance, both within and between factions. It showed how faction pride, when taken to extremes, could lead to destruction and tragedy. Mists also gave us great new characters. The wise narrator and guide Lord Walker Cho, the tale of Emperor Xiaohao, which was told through Blizzard's stunning animated shorts. That was more than just lore. It was a philosophical roadmap, one man confronting and overcoming his inner darkness to protect his people. And of course, Lei Shen, the Thunder King, who served as one of the best original villains Blizzard has ever created. Proud, ruthless, and terrifyingly effective. Even Garrosh, who had been simmering in previous expansions, reached his boiling point here. His downfall wasn't a surprise twist. It was the logical, horrifying consequence of everything we'd seen from him since Wrath of the Lich King. And that's what makes this story so compelling. Garrosh wasn't corrupted by some dark magic or outside influence. He was the corruption. His arc was a brutal lesson in pride, power, and what happens when a faction puts victory above honour. In the end, the final boss of Mists of Pandaria wasn't an old god, or a titan, or a cosmic horror. It was us. Our aggression, our hubris, our refusal to listen. We arrived in Pandaria as conquerors. We left as something else. Humble, wiser, and scarred by the cost of war. In retrospect, this expansion stands as one of the boldest narrative pivots that WoW has ever made. It was the first time Blizzard moved away from familiar lore heavyweights to introduce something new, philosophical, and deeply reflective. And it worked. Even if not everyone appreciated it at the time, the legacy it left behind speaks volumes. If you've enjoyed this video so far, there's a playlist on screen of my retrospectives you can check out if you're interested. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, please consider subscribing. It really helps the channel, and it lets you know when the next deep dive goes live. Thank you for watching and your support, and let's finally get into this. Okay, let's address the elephant, or should I say, the Kung Fu Panda in the room. Yes, the Pandaren looked cuddly. Yes, Kung Fu Panda had come out 2 years earlier. And yes, some players wrote off the whole expansion because once you go past the surface level meat, the Pandaren was so much more than just a joke race. One of the most fascinating things about them is that they were a neutral race. This had never been done before. When you made a Pandaren character, you started in their own unique zone, the Wandering Isle, and only chose your allegiance to the Alliance or Horde after completing the intro experience. The Pandaren also felt rich in culture and lore. Their philosophies, architecture and attitude offered a peaceful contrast to the constant war that usually defined WoW. And their story wasn't about world-ending doom at first. It was about balance, internal conflict, and rediscovery. That slower, more reflective tone was something WoW hadn't really done before, and I think Blizzard deserve a lot of praise for it. While the expansion wore its Eastern influences on its sleeve, it never felt like parody. The Pandaren were rooted in a believable culture, and that grounded them in the world, even as they brought something totally new to it. And then we have the Monk class. The Monk was the first new class since Death Knights in Wrath of the Lich King. Monks were light on their feet, focusing on mobility, fluid combat, and chi-based resource management. Monks were also the first class to fully integrate a 3-role system from the start that was actually viable. Brewmaster for tanking, Mistweaver for healing, and Windwalker for DPS. Brewmasters used stagger mechanics to delay and manage damage rather than block or soak. Mistweavers blurred the lines between caster and melee healer, with fist weaving being a unique and polarizing playstyle, and Windwalkers brought fast-paced, combo-driven DPS that felt more like a fighting game than a traditional WoW style. Monks were a bit underplayed at launch, mainly because they started at level 1 instead of jumping in like Death Knights. But those who gave them a shot found a class that was smooth, expressive, and deeply satisfying to master. Blizzard didn't just nail the new class, they nailed every class. And for once, you could actually play what you loved without being punished for it. So let's talk about class design. Class design is one of the highest highs of Mists of Pandaria. In many expansions, both before and after Mists, there were often clearly dead specs within the game. Ones that maybe you would use for leveling or just a bit of fun, but never in anything serious. In Mists of Pandaria, every spec was viable, in both PvE and PvP. This led to a rare sense in the game where you could actually play what you enjoyed without feeling punished. Each spec had identity and flavour. Shadow Priests felt like twisted voidcasters. Elemental Shamans had a thunderous flashy feel. And Warlocks, especially with the new resource systems, felt complex and powerful. Blizzard struck a very good balance between making specs feel distinct while still giving all classes tools they need. Interrupts, defensives, mobility and so on. Specs generally had tight well-tuned rotations or priority systems. Many had satisfying proc mechanics, for example, Chaos Vault windows for Warlocks and Hot Streak for Fire Mages. Abilities synergized well without relying on excessive randomness, and cooldowns felt powerful and perfect. I would probably say it was the last complex era before pruning began. After Mists of Pandaria, Warlords of Draenor began the ability pruning era, simplifying rotations and removing niche spells, but Warlords is a video for another time. For many, Mists of Pandaria represented the last time that classes felt full, complex, and rewarding to master without feeling bloated. Moving into the talents, the Mists of Pandaria talent system was innovating, but it definitely wasn't loved at launch. Blizzard completely overhauled the talent system. Instead of the traditional trees that offered tons of incremental stat boosts and ability ranks, this system was a streamlined setup. One talent choice every 15 levels, with each row offering 3 distinct options that usually focused on utility, crowd control, movement, or survivability. For some players, it was a breath of fresh air. It stripped away the illusion of choice that had plagued the old system, and I think this is even clearer after seeing Classic WoW. In previous expansions, there would usually be 1 or 2 air quotes correct builds per spec, and the rest were either flavor picks or essentially traps for the uninformed. MOP's systems would narrow things down to meaningful decisions. You could switch talents depending on the raiding counter or your PvP composition, or just how you prefer to play. But like most things in life, not everybody agreed of course. To some players, the new system felt too simplified. Progression stopped feeling important. This new system, possibly, was also small. It was less like a tree, more like a menu. And for long-time WoW players, it didn't feel right. It removed that RPG layer of tweaking your build, of planning your spec out at level 10 and slowly shaping it into something powerful. In a way, this change symbolized a broader design shift that defined Mists of Pandaria. One that favoured clarity and gameplay depth over nostalgic complexity. Mists of Pandaria's talent tree may be remembered as one of the best iterations Blizzard has made, at least in the eyes of the high-end players and theory crafters, but it wasn't universally praised when it arrived. Some players saw it as a loss of identity and a step towards a more homogenized, streamlined WoW. Other players saw it as the first time the game finally gave players real choices. Looking back, it might just be both. We'll start with the Pandaren starter zone for Wandering Isle. Nestled in the background, on the back of a giant turtle, this place was unlike any other place experience. The Wandering Isle was serene. It was a gentle, inviting introduction to Pandaria, filled with wonderment and the promise of adventure. Players learned about the Pandaran's balance between discipline and freedom. They trained under the watchful eyes of the Elders, and eventually, they were given a chance to join either the Horde or the Alliance, depending on their path. It was a choice that felt meaningful. The Pandaren weren't just joining factions, they were deciding how to help a world at war. The Wandering Isle also set the tone for Mists of Pandaria's approach to storytelling. Rather than throw players into the deep end, collect plots and build epic threads, he let them ease in, to feel connected to the world, and understand the stakes in their own time. There was a sense of belonging in that place, something that was echoed throughout the rest of the expansion. When players said goodbye to the Wandering Isle, it wasn't just a goodbye to a zone, it was a goodbye to the innocence of their beginning. I would like to think a lot of us look back on the Jade Forest as a really memorable zone, not just because it was the first step into Pandaria, but because of how rich and atmospheric it was. This zone offered a true sense of exploration and wonder, especially the first time through. It was also the first place where players began to see just how ambitious Mists was. You'd often hear people say things like, "This doesn't feel like WoW anymore," but they didn't always mean it in a bad way. The music, the lighting, the pacing, it all felt different, more patient, more confident. It had some great quests too, particularly the storytelling with Kirin, Shokia and Rico. I'll never forget the first time I played through this, and how much I laughed when Rico asked Kirin for a kiss.
It is not why I fight.
Your turret has been destroyed. An enemy has been slain.
What the oof is wrong with your face? You did it!
And of course, the crazy witch Pandaren turning people into jade statues. Something that always sticks out in my mind with the Jade Forest is the Order of the Cloud Serpent, tucked away in the northeastern cliffs. You raised your own Cloud Serpent from a hatchling, you trained with it, raced it, bonded with it, and by the end of the quest line, when your fully grown serpent flew beside you, this didn't just feel like another match. This one felt like yours. The Jade Forest was the beginning of a journey that would forever shape players' experiences in Pandaria. It set the tone for an expansion filled with wonder, discovery, and a deeper connection to the world of Azeroth. As players left, they carried with them the memories of their first steps into a new land, a place that, for many, will remain a lasting symbol of what Mists of Pandaria was all about, a new chapter waiting to be explored. The Valley of the Four Winds is one of my all-time favourite zones in WoW. Bright, breezy, and full of life. It traded battlefields for barley fields, a place where the biggest danger might just be an angry goat. It was slower, more personal, and for a lot of players, it was kind of magical. If you're old like me, you probably remember Farmville blowing up on Facebook. Around that time, it felt like every game was adding some kind of farming or cozy progression system, and WoW's answer was the Tillers. The Tillers were tied to a reputation system where you could increase your standing with different NPCs by helping them on their farms. When you first start, you're given your very own farm plot, which you can tend to by planting crops, watering them, pulling weeds, and scaring off vermin. As you level up your reputation with these NPCs by completing various farm tasks, you unlock rewards like new recipes, unique crops to grow, and even the ability to expand your farm with additional plots. While there are no big gear rewards from this is a very fondly remembered system in Mists of Pandaria. It was light-hearted and weirdly addictive. And of course we had Galleon, a towering Mushan carrying a war cart full of bandits, one of Mists of Pandaria's first world bosses. The reason I think the Valley of the Four Winds worked so well, and why it stands as one of my favourite zones, is because it trusted players to enjoy the simple things. A quiet hilltop, a playful questline, a warm...
Here are some sports and competition.
Did you just fucking check?
I made a video.
Techie, please.
I was watching.
Why would I?
You can.
Good evening.
Here are some spoilers.
Must know Molly for 8.
The mystery North Korea.
Oh, this is why people say it.
Guys have lost control.
Do you guys remember the GTX 1080? Maybe the most legendary graphics card ever made.
So Gargura made a new model, I guess. This is her new character.
Fishy!
Man.
Fishy, 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 fishy.
This stream had over 200,000 viewers.
Fishy, fishy,
It was crazy.
Is your brain melted yet?
Be at 200K. Can you believe that? So Gargura made a
You can ask for flowers, I sit for hours, telling all the bloopers, the Bill and Coopers. You can ask for flowers, I sit for hours, telling all the bloopers.
Bad Company 2 is delisted from Steam and EA.
Let's talk about our first S tier champion, which is going to be Briar. Now, you guessed it, Briar is probably the strongest stat-checking champion in the game. Nothing beats this champion in terms of 1v1 as long as you're playing decently well, you farm nicely. Briar sort of has it all except for good team fights and except for like a consistent way to play mechanically, but there is a lot of fun concepts on Briar. I personally don't like this champion because I don't like losing control over my character. Losing control of your character is not fun to me, but it is very, very broken champion nonetheless, especially with the bug fixes and the E change. Let's talk about our first S tier champion, which is gonna be.
He's gonna be on my red buff right now, just a heads up.
I can't do nothing, brother.
I'm letting them know, but I'm just letting you know too in case he comes around to you. That's you, bro, that's you, that's an easy kill. Hamza, just put him in a kebab, bro. Lord have mercy on your soul, bro. Holy fuck, man, you're real. He's gonna be on my red buff right now, just.
What was the TV series of the year you were born? So I was born in 1980. Why is the color changing? I'm guessing that the TV series of the year was probably either MASH or... Yeah, I'm thinking it was MASH. That was really popular back then. Let's see what it was. Magnum PI! What was the TV series of the year you were born? So I was born in 1980.
In Mario Kart World, there's no way of telling who voted for each track online. This is actually more important than it seems because in competitive play, intermission tracks are banned, and picking the same track twice in one event is banned. In a 12-player lobby, this can kinda be worked around as it's not too ridiculous to ask each player for a switch clip proving they didn't do it. But in any bigger of a lobby, that's just not logistically reasonable, so the rule isn't enforced. And well, I tried out a 24-player lounge event today, and this happened.
You got another one? Oh, is it just the same one?
It's the same one.
I see. Oh my god.
Or no, DK Spaceport to be Stadium. Oh my god! that's... Oh my
god.
Oh my god. Yes!
Yep. Oh my
Number
god.
4!
Oh, no,
we need Worldwides back so bad, man. In Mario Kart World, there's no...
What's this?
If you think you're about to just beat on me, baby, on behalf of my ancestors, you got me f***ed up.
I don't care about nothing, man.
Damn, what's she doing this shit for?
I don't care about nothing.
What's she doing that spinning shit for? She acting like this is some fucking Smash Brothers. Damn! Damn! Oh!
Come on, man.
Come on! Ancestor? Oh, yeah, bro, she got knocked the fuck out, yeah! Twice the pride, double the fall? Yeah, I guess so. What's this?
If you think you're about to just beat on me, baby, on behalf of my ancestors.
What if you order 2 RTX 38?
battle, we are reborn.
What's the most cursed Pokemon fusion you can think of?
I've played this game a lot. Anything with a Miltank is kind of terrifying. So like Miltank and Pinsir.
Any poison type, Mr. for fairy type. Garboda and Wigglytuff.
Gengar and Charizard.
Mr. Mime with Lickitungue's tongue. Ditto, the purple, weird-looking Pokemon, which creeps me out. And maybe we fuse it with like a Squirtle or something.
Garbodor and Hattery. Jigglypuff and Giratina. I think that'll be a very ugly Pokemon.
Gardevoir and Muck.
Oh yeah, Muck with like anything. Muck and like a Snorlax, just a massive snotty slime ball.
If you start with like the Reggie Steel sprite, that and Mr. Rhyme, that could come out really bad. Mr. Mime and Jinx.
No Wiglet, immediately him, and then any of the pink Pokemon. Love Dish, Wiglet, together. Inappropriate.
What's the most cursed Pokemon fusion you can think of?
I've played.
Hey man, Windows sucks.
A cool thing about being a
Hey man, Windows sucks.
What do you mean? What's wrong?
Well, I can only copy and paste one thing at a time.
Yeah?
Name a time in your life when you saw someone holding a clipboard and they didn't do this.
Huh. Never thought of that. You do know you can have up to 25 things on your clipboard at a time, right?
What? How?
Just hit Windows and V.
Okay.
And click Turn on Keyboard History.
Is that it?
Yeah. Now, anytime you hit Windows and V, you can paste any of the last 25 things you copy.
Holy shit, it remembers things.
And now you have emojis, too.
Oh, my scripts are gonna get so much more fun.
Heart eyes emoji, kissy face emoji, thumbs up emoji.
See, Phil, I told you you'd read it. Hey man, Windows sucks.
What do you mean? What's wrong?
Well, I can only copy and paste one thing at a time.
Yeah?
Name a time in your life when you saw someone holding a clipboard and they didn't do this.
Huh. Never thought of that. You do know you can have up to 25 things on your.
A cool thing about being a content creator full-time.
Nintendo offered this Japanese scientist $11 million, but this is why he turned it down.
Have you played Dollman's favorite song?
I've been offered a lot of money to gamble, like multiple $10+ million offers to do different gambling contracts and stuff. It's just not really something that I'm in.
This is Japan's weirdest fashion item that people actually use, but does it even work? So a lot of blue-collar workers use these fan jackets to stay cool in Japan's brutal summers, but I've honestly been a little bit skeptical, so I came to Japan's most tropical island to test it out. I'm gonna wear a gray t-shirt without the jacket for 15 minutes in this brutal heat, and then I'm gonna put on the jacket with a different gray t-shirt and see how much I sweat. Very scientific, I know. I mean, I don't know if you can already tell, but I'm sweating. I haven't even started walking. Look at that. Literally looks like Woohoo Island. I feel gross. This is only 10 minutes. I don't think staying out here another 5 minutes is gonna change the color of my shirt because it is soaked. Okay, so I just put the jacket on. I'm sure you can see the air coming out. I'm not gonna lie, I already feel 10 times cooler. I look like a marshmallow. The air blowing in is actually really cool. The jacket's actually really thin, and I don't feel hot. Cut to me like 10 minutes ago. Oh yeah, and I feel
what I can become.
And weirdly addictive. And of course we had Galleon, a towering Mushan carrying a war cast full of bandits, one of Mr. Pandaria's first world bosses. The reason I think the Valley of the Four Winds worked so well, and why it stands as one of my favourite zones, is because it trusted players to enjoy the simple things. A quiet hilltop, a playful questline, a warm village. This zone was brilliant. Half Hill didn't just feel like a quest hub, it felt like a home. Krasarang Wilds was easy to overlook at first. Murky, overgrown, and wild. And if you just followed the main story, it was a brief stopover. Nat Pagle had set up shop at Angler's Wharf, introducing the laid-back Anglers faction. Fishing, daily quests, and rewards like a water-walking mount. Then came patch 5.1, and everything changed. Krasarang became the front line of a new war. The Horde and Alliance launched full-scale invasions, establishing massive footholds, Lion's Landing, and Domination Point. It wasn't just visual either. The zone got new daily hubs, evolving quest lines, and cinematic-driven stories tied to Dominance Offensive and Operation Shieldwall. Faction leaders like Garrosh, Jaina, and Varian took centre stage. It was one of the first times the zone evolved so meaningfully mid-expansion. From the farmlands of southern Pandaria, players crossed the Veiled Stair, a winding path into the Highlands. Hidden here was the Tavern in the Mists, where you begin Rathian's legendary questline. It also housed the elusive Black Market Auction House and the Terrace of Endless Spring Raid. Beyond that, it led into the cold towering peaks of Kunlai Summit. Kunlai was a real spectacle. Snow-covered cliffs, steep mountain passes, and monasteries in the clouds. At its heart was the Temple of the White Tiger, home to Xuen, one of the 4 August Celestials. Players had to prove themselves in a brief combat trial before entering the Veil. A small moment, but one that stuck. You'd also encounter the Shadow Pan, stoic protectors tasked with keeping darkness at bay. Their full story would come later in Townlong Steppes, but here they added quiet tension. I want to give a shout out to Mount Everest, Pandaria's highest point. A cheeky play on Everest, obviously. It became a quiet goal, climb it, just to say you did. WoW didn't usually offer this kind of verticality, and Kunlai handled it beautifully. In ancient tales, this was where Emperor Xiaohao meditated, seeking clarity as he wrestled with fear and doubt. And of course, it would be remiss not to mention the Grand Expedition Yak. If you were lucky, or rich enough, to buy it from Uncle Big Pocket, you unlocked a portable transmogrifier, repair, and vendor mount. It's a must-have, really, a staple of modern WoW. Even today, you still see it everywhere, a lasting reminder of missed attention to flair. The Shah of Anger was also housed here, making Kunlai one of the expansion's most memorable battlegrounds. I thought the zones in Pandaria were gorgeous, until we got here. By the time you reached Townlong Steppes, Pandaria's tone had changed completely, gone with the peaceful farms. This was the front line. This was the first zone where you fought the Mounted head-on. You teamed up with the Shadow Pan, now fully in the spotlight. Through daily quests, you fought alongside rotating companions who added personality to the grind. A small attempt at variety in a reputation system that, like many in Mists, became a chore over time, which we'll come on to soon. For me, Townlong wasn't about sweeping moments. It was about the slow march forward. It was bleak, heavy, but important. Even the music at the time here. Slow, drifting, mournful. It matched the sense of attrition the Slayers felt. It proved to be a great setup for the final zone. The Dread Wastes was just so visually unappealing to me. Amber-coated terrain, twisted trees, and a sense that something just wasn't right here. It was huge, non-linear, and swarming with mantles. Players would awaken the Klaxi, an ancient order who weren't enemies, but not exactly allies either. The Klaxi reputation involved daily quests tied to the paragons you unlocked. Some gave unique combat buffs to add some variety. The Dread Wastes wasn't the prettiest zone, or even the most fun to quest in, but it stuck with people. The Veil of Eternal Blossoms was Pandaria's heart, geographically and symbolically. This was where the expansion's capitals sat, the Shrine of 7 Stars and the Shrine of 2 Moons, but it wasn't accessible from the start. At launch, the Veil was sealed off, guarded by the Golden Lotus. Gaining entry required level 90 and completing an initiation storyline. The Golden Lotus offered daily quests focusing on fighting the Mogu and supporting their efforts to resist the Mogu's influence in Pandaria. At first, it felt exciting, new areas unlocked with progress, but for many, that excitement faded fast. Not all dailies were a grind though. One of my favourites was up on the Serpent Spine, a fast-paced racing mini-game dodging obstacles like something out of Crash Bandicoot. It was silly, unexpected, and a great example of how Mists wasn't afraid to get weird. I'll talk about dailies and burnout in a bit more detail shortly. A memory that always stuck out with me in the Vale was a rare Tauren named Yorick Sharpeye, who sat peacefully near a tree. Defeat him, and you could earn a toy that turns you into Mr. Smite, the iconic Dead Mines pirate. One of those weird little secrets that made the world feel playful. And high above the Vale floated Alani, a glowing red cloud serpent, invulnerable unless you crafted the Sky Crystal. That required collecting 10 Sky Shards. Of course, the Vale wouldn't stay untouched. In time, it was corrupted. Golden trees turned black, skies filled with smoke. The zone that once felt like a sanctuary became a battlefield. Finally, just off the northern coast of Kunlai, Isle of Giants, an eerie bone-covered island. This was no questing zone, this was a hunting ground. Massive dinosaur bones, elite beasts, and one colossal world boss, Undasta. What I liked about this isle was that it practically demanded brute force. Here you could earn the Bone White Primal Raptor mount. This mount could be obtained by collecting bones which were later traded for the Raptor. Players could also earn other recolored Raptors from the eggs found on the island. As beautiful as the zones were, Mists had a growing problem, one that became harder to ignore. Reputation gating, daily overload, burdens. At launch, nearly every major reward was locked behind a faction reputation. Gear, crafting, vanity items, mounts. To earn it, you did daily quests. Every day. For every faction. And just before launch, Blizzard made a major change. They removed the 25 daily quest cap. It sounded like freedom, but in practice, it meant players could, and felt they had to, do dozens each day. It wasn't just the Golden Lotus. There was the Klaxi, the Cloud Serpent, the Tillers, the Anglers, the Shadowpan, the August Celestials, each with their own hub, currency, and requirements. Often chained, one needed to be completed to unlock another. For completionists and progression-minded players, it became overwhelming. Not because the content was bad, but because there was so much, and no clear ceiling. It led to what many now call daily burnouts, a sense that joy was buried under checklists and repetition. Think of BFA, for example. Blizzard did try to course correct. Later patches added variety and story-driven progress, and future expansions would learn from this. Even so, these zones were unforgettable. Mr. Pandaria delivered some of the most visually striking and tonally unique areas in WoW's history, and maybe that's what made it special. Whether you were farming turnips, racing your Cloud Serpent, or climbing Mount Everest, Pandaria asked us to slow down, to notice, to be there. The Isle of Thunder was probably one of the most ambitious post-launch zones created at the time. It became a battleground where the Kirin Tor Offensive and the Sunreaver Assault fought for control, while the Shadowpan Assault focused on their ultimate goal, taking down Lei Shen, the Thunder King. Players accessed the Isle through portals near the faction camps in Townlong Steppes, with no flying allowed, adding to the grounded, immersive experience. The island featured a mix of open-world questing, faction war campaigns, daily objectives, and unlockable content that expanded as players progressed. The Isle of Thunder was pivotal with advancing the narrative, allowing players to experience the rising tension and final steps towards the epic showdown in the Throne of Thunder. Whilst I said I wasn't a big PvPer, one of the standout features was the dynamic PvP environment. The Kirin Tor Offensive and Sunreaver Assault pushed forward, fighting over beachheads and strategic points, creating a living war zone. The island was also packed with rare mobs and hidden secrets, including a host of challenging and engaging side objectives. A memorable quest for me was the Crumbled Chamberlain, a timed scavenger hunt that had players scouring the island to reassemble the shattered remains of Lei Shen's royal attendants. With only 10 minutes to succeed, it turned exploration into a frantic race, blending humour, lore, and a dash of pressure into one of the Isle's most memorable quests. And for those on Rathfiel's legendary questline, the island held even greater meaning. Deep within the Thunder King's domain, the Thunder Forge became the site of a pivotal moment, where players, guided by Rathian, forged their powerful legendary meta gem in a solo scenario. This infused their gear with thunderous new power, and tied the legendary narrative directly into the heart of Pandaria's endgame. One of the unique and memorable highlights was the Trove of the Thunder King, a challenging solo scenario where players raced against the clock inside Lei Shen's ancient citadel to grab as much treasure as possible. Players began by offering a key to Taoshi, a Shadowpan scout, who opened the gates to the treasure-filled chambers. What followed was a thrilling gauntlet of traps, lightning blasts, patrolling stone guardians, and enemy trolls, requiring precise timing and quick reflexes. Along the way, players loot gold, rare crafting materials, and powerful artifacts, while dodging deadly lightning bolts and massive stone sentries. The final challenge was an elite troll boss, Godholt Golken, guarding the deepest vaults. Successful runs rewarded players with valuable loot and keys to open burial troves scattered around the island, some of the best gear available outside of raids at the time. I thought this was great. It was good fun, very memorable, and a nice change of pace. The Isle of Thunder was also home to Nalak, the Stormlord, one of the most infamous world bosses of the expansion. Nalak was a sought-after target for many players. Not only did it drop high-tier loot, but also had a chance to reward players with a highly coveted mount. The Isle of Thunder's design, scope, and narrative integration made it a milestone in WoW's evolution. It was a bold experiment in dynamic layered content that rewarded player investment across PvE and PvP, solo and group play. It was a trailblazer, and its DNA echoes in many future zones, remembered fondly as a complex and defining chapter in Pandaria's story. At the heart of Mr. Pandaria's narrative was a legendary questline that spanned the entire expansion. A slow-burning storyline built around the Black Prince Rathian, son of Deathwind. Unlike previous legendaries tied to either RNG or raid rolls, this core questline was available to all players, regardless of class or spec. It was Blizzard's most ambitious attempt yet to deliver a legendary experience that felt personal, story-rich, and achievable. Through patch after patch, players followed Rathian's journey, assisting him in gathering intelligence, facing down powerful foes, and slowly piecing together a vision of Azeroth's future. Along the way, we saw major beats like Rathian's uneasy friendship with Prince Anduin, his disillusionment with the factions, and his increasing obsession with preparing for an inevitable Burning Legion invasion. It was a story filled with philosophical weight, where Rathian questioned not just who should lead, but whether peace was even possible. The questline sent players across Pandaria, collecting sigils, defeating world bosses, engaging in scenario-based storytelling, and earning reputation. It was a grind, but it meant something. Every patch brought new developments and new steps, and by the end, players were rewarded with something truly iconic, their very own legendary club. The final chapter culminated in a solo scenario, a one-on-one challenge where Rathian stands beside you as you fight through trials and confront a powerful final foe. It was the emotional and mechanical crescendo of the entire journey, a moment where the story and gameplay aligned beautifully, driving home the personal nature of the rewards. Each cloak came with a unique effect based on your role. Tanks, healers, and DPS all received different props designed to suit their playstyle, and they weren't just strong, they looked amazing. The moment you unlocked your legendary, it sprouted glowing wings during combat, bursting to life with arcane, fire, shadow, or wind energy depending on your specialization. It was a visual reward that felt earned and unmistakably iconic. The cloak also unlocked access to Ordos, a powerful world boss on the Timeless Isle, but only those who had completed the full questline could even enter its domain, making the cloak not just a reward, but a key to future content. As great as this all sounds, it wasn't without its flaws. Some players found the grind a bit too reliant on RNG, especially during the earlier phases that required collecting sigils and runestones from bosses. Progression could feel slow if you were unlucky with drops, and since each chapter was tied to the current patch, others felt restricted by the time-gated nature of the questline. Even still, these limitations didn't outweigh the impact of the experience. They were just the growing pains of trying something bold and new. Today, the questline has been removed from the live game, making new legendary experiences you can't go back and complete. In that way, it became a moment in time, a journey shared by those who were there, and remembered fondly for how it made players feel involved in something much bigger than themselves. Pet battles were introduced in Mists of Pandaria as a new minigame that lets players collect, train, and battle with their favourite in-game pets. Think of it as WoW's take on Pokemon. Players will capture creatures in the wild, level them up, and challenge both NPCs and other players in strategic turn-based combat. Much like the expansion itself, pet battles were met with skepticism. The pet battle system was mocked by some as too light-hearted or gimmicky, but beneath the surface was one of the most charming and unexpected deep features WoW had seen in years. At first, they were seen as a quirky side activity, but over time, they became a beloved and surprisingly deep part of the game. For collectors and completionists especially, hunting rare pets and building the perfect team added rewarding layers of gameplay outside of the usual dungeons and raids. Pet battles would also encourage players to re-explore Azeroth. Many rare pets were tied to specific zones, events, or weather conditions, leading players to revisit old content in a fresh way. Beyond just collecting, pet battles offered a lighter, more casual side to WoW that appealed to a wide range of players. It was a way to engage with the world's creatures in a new way that even become a social activity, challenging friends or strangers to battles and sharing strategies. The variety of pets was impressive. Everything from common critters like squirrels and rabbits to rare exotic creatures tied to specific zones or events. Each pet belonged to a specific family, such as beast, mechanical, or undead for example, had its own set of unique abilities. This meant players had to carefully build their teams and think strategically, taking strengths and weaknesses into account. Pets could be leveled up, unlocking new abilities and becoming stronger over time, adding a satisfying sense of progression to each battle. There were NPC pet trainers scattered across Azeroth which offered quests and tough battles, encouraging players to explore and master the system. Over time, a passionate community would grow around pet battles, sharing guides, competing in tournaments. At the peak of the system, the Celestial Tournament, the prestigious no-gear rule introduced in patch 5.4. It required a deep and well-rounded roster, players needing to defeat multiple powerful trainers in a single run. Succeeding in the tournament rewarded celestial pets modelled after Pandaria's August Celestial. These became a true badge of honour among pet battle veterans. In many ways, it was WoW's most accessible engine, turn-based, relaxing, and playable in short bursts without needing a raid group or high-end gear. And remarkably, it stuck. More than a decade later, pet battles are still being updated with new pets, trainers, and achievements every expansion. What started as a fun diversion became one of the most enduring systems in WoW, fitting for an expansion that proved everyone wrong. Scenarios were a fresh addition in Mists of Pandaria, introducing short, free-player instances built around progressive objectives and compelling story arcs. Unlike traditional dungeons or raids, scenarios were completely role-less, meaning you didn't need to worry about having a tank or a healer to succeed. Any class combination could work, making them accessible and flexible for players looking to experience cooperative content without the pressure of strict group composition. One of the biggest draws of scenarios was the reward system. They offered a faster, more casual way to earn reputation, valour, gear, and achievements, serving as a welcome alternative to longer, more demanding dungeons or raid runs. Many were also tied into major faction campaigns like Operation Shieldwall and the Dominance Offensive, acting as narrative milestones while helping players progress reputations or weekly goals. Patch 5.3 introduced heroic scenarios, which added a layer of challenge for pre-made groups. These harder versions came with bonus objectives that reward higher item level gear, proving that scenarios weren't just lightweight content, they had meaningful rewards for progression-focused players too. Some scenarios weren't just side stories, they were crucial chapters in the expansion's larger narrative. For example, A Little Patience highlighted Varian Rin's growth as a leader during the Alliance's campaign in Grassland Wilds, while Dagger in the Dark let Horde players meet Orion's growing suspicion of Garrett. These weren't just fillers, they delivered plot lines you couldn't see anywhere else, often with voice acting, in-game cinematics, and phasing to immerse you in the moment. Beyond efficiency, scenarios were also a breath of fresh air. The engaging narratives and unique mechanics made them a fun break from the usual grind. Memorable moments like Theranos Fall, The Secrets of Ragefire, and The Dark Heart of Pandaria delivered some of the expansion's most cinematic story beats, making players feel like they were active participants in key events across Pandaria. Scenarios also encouraged social play in a new way. Because you didn't need to coordinate traditional roles, it was easier for friends to group up and tackle content together, or for more casual players to jump in without the pressure of filling a specific role. This flexibility is a big part of why many players appreciate the scenario as a refreshing change of taste. More importantly, scenarios help lay the groundwork for several quality of life improvements in WoW's group content. Their success showed Blizzard that smaller, more bite-sized experiences could still be meaningful and rewarding, influencing future designs like Proving Grounds, artifact acquisition quests in Legion, and even the War Within's Delves. The tech and philosophy behind scenarios endured, long after the format itself faded. From Warlords of Draenor onward, no new 3-player endgame scenarios were added. Instead, Blizzard began repurposing scenario mechanics for solo or campaign-driven quests, often using the same instanced framework for cinematic storylines. And while not universally loved, some players found scenarios too short or lacking challenge compared to dungeons. They remain an important step in Blizzard's evolving approach to content, and provided innovation that showed WoW didn't need to be all or nothing. It could also be small, smart, and story-driven. It may not have lasted, but scenarios show even the smallest moments, 3 players, 10 minutes, 1 story, can still leave a lasting mark. Brawler's Guild also arrived with Mists of Pandaria, delivering a gladiator-style solo challenge that offered a very different kind of gameplay from standard dungeons and raids. Accessible through a secretive quest chain, Installment for Alliance and Orgrim of the Horde, it felt like joining an underground fight club. No groups, no raids, just you, a crowd of onlookers, and one tough boss at a time. Fights were fast, brutal, and often bizarre, featuring a roster of quirky and challenging enemies that tested individual player skill, quick thinking, and class mastery. With Johnny Awesome as the stick, the Brawler's Guild theme was real, and that was part of the charm. But you imagine it wasn't just in the fights, it was in the atmosphere. Players would queue up, form in formal lines, cheer each other on, and share tips between rounds. While Alliance and Horde had separate locations, the experience felt universally shared. It was one of the rare systems in WoW that encouraged solo progression, but also created a sense of collective effort. There was even spectator mode, letting people gather around the ring and watch fights play out in real time, a rare feature of the time that added a sense of scale and theatre to the whole experience. Many players still fondly remember the atmosphere, the tension before your name was called, the roar of the crowd when you finally beat that one boss you'd been stuck on for hours. And if you want a taste of the challenge, look no further than Uhuru, often cited as one of the hardest Brawler Guild bosses ever. During his fight, Uhuru becomes nearly invulnerable behind a divine shield and summons angelic ads called Avenging Angels. Defeating these ads causes beams of holy light to appear, and only by luring Uhuru into these beams can you break his shield and deal real damage. It was a brutal DPS and positioning deck with a tight enrage timer that punished even the smallest mistakes. The Brawlers Guild was one of the most experimental, community-driven systems WoW had ever introduced. It didn't try to be an endgame killer, it just offered something different. A challenge, a crowd, a moment in the spotlight, and for many, that was enough. If the Brawlers Guild was solo content turned into a spectacle with a roaring crowd, wild fights and bragging rights, then this was its quieter cousin. Tucked away in the Temple of the White Tiger, past the majestic statues and the monks, was a silent little group, with no audience, no glory, just focus, the Proving Ground. Added in patch 5.4, Proving Grounds was Blizzard's first real attempt to help players improve their roles through structured solo challenges. No raid mechanics, no group dynamics, just you, your abilities, and a timer ticking down. Whether you were tank, healer, or DPS, there was a bronze, silver, or gold challenge waiting for you. And if you really wanted to flex, there was endless mode. Wave after wave of increasing difficulty, pushing your cooldowns, timing, and sanity to the limit. The trials were basic by today's standards, but back then, they were quietly revolutionary. DPS had to race against the clock, managing cleave, interrupt, and mobility. Tanks had to keep a fragile NPC healer alive while fending off mobs, and healers, they had to deal with the real final boss. An AI party that stood in fire, didn't use defensives, and forgot what line of sight meant. For casual players, it was a low-stakes space to learn. For veterans, it was a fun flex, especially in endless mode. It didn't have to make it. For some, it was the first taste of solo prestige. Come Warlords of Draenor, silver rank became a requirement to queue for heroic dungeons. But it wasn't perfect. Proving Grounds lacked meaningful incentives. No loot, no mounts, and barely any achievements beyond wave counts. The feedback was vague too. You either passed, or you didn't. And unless you were self-motivated, there wasn't much reason to return. Today, Proving Grounds still technically exist, hidden in class holes or tucked away in some menu probably. Most players probably don't even remember how to get there. I know I don't. But their legacy, you can feel it. To every challenge that says, hey, you've got this, just prove it. And it was proof that not every challenge in WoW needs to be a group activity. Proving Grounds didn't ask you to be perfect, just to try. When Mists of Pandaria launched, the dungeons were one of those things that made the expansion feel both familiar and fresh. I won't lie, I'm not particularly fond of the Mists of Pandaria dungeons these days. Every time Time Walking rolls around, I can't help but dread it. But back then, there was something undeniably cool about running these for the first time. Let's start with one of my favourites, Temple of the Jade Sword. What made this dungeon stand out for me was the pacing. It struck a really nice balance between exploration and action, and the fact you could take different paths through the temple added some welcome replayability. The bosses left a good impression too. Wise Mari's fight with the spinning water beam is a good example. You actually had to move and adapt to the route, rather than just standing still and burning the boss. Lordwalker Stonestep was interesting as well, partly because his fight had two versions. One where you helped extinguish the Five Suns, and another corrupted version where you had to balance strife and peril. Liu Flameheart was my favourite fight in the dungeon. Watching her fall to the Shard of Doubt and summon Yulon the Jade Serpent mid-fight, it just made the encounter feel bigger than it actually was. That whole sequence, the inner turmoil, the transformation, it all tied into the expansion story so well. And then of course the final boss, the Shard of Doubt. Facing literal reflections of yourself as part of the fight was very cool. It wasn't just a cool mechanic, it played directly into Pandaria's themes. That idea of confronting your own doubts, your own fears. It's no wonder this dungeon still gets remembered fondly. In fact, it made its way back into the Mythic Plus rotation during Dragonflight's first season, a testament to how well it's held up. Stormstout Brewery was one of the real standouts for me, mostly because of how fun and chaotic it felt. It completely contrasted with a lot of other dungeons in the expansion. This place wasn't about ancient ruins or corrupted temples, it was just drunken Pandaran nonsense, and I loved it. The first boss, set the tone straight away. Rolling barrels bouncing all over the room while you tried to dodge and deal damage. It was frantic, ridiculous, but it was pretty fun. Smash barrel into boss, big numbers, who doesn't love that? Then came Hoptalis. You had hoplings, hoppers, boppers, waves of ads constantly trying to overwhelm the group. When I think about this boss, I always think of the big old hammers scattered around the place and just smashing your way through the madness. The fight itself would get hectic. Ads charging everywhere, dodging carrot breath, dealing with whirlwinds. There was quite a bit going on with this one. Finally, you had Yanzu the Uncapped, Uncle Gao's completely unhinged brewing experiment. This fight was a bit mad. Yanzu cycling through random brew effects, growing larger, dealing more damage, and then of course the carbonation mechanic. The whole room fills with foam, locking you in place until you grab a fizzy bubble and lift off the ground to avoid it. This dungeon was just so silly. It was fun, and it captured the humour, chaos, and whimsy of Pandaria perfectly. It can't just be me who has a problem with this dungeon. Into the Setting Sun just never really did it for me. It's got a cool idea, the Mantis Siege, fighting to defend Pandaria, but in practice, I was never a fan of the environment, and the bosses left me underwhelmed. The first boss brought some chaos, with bombs strapped to players. He wasn't the most exciting fight, but the random explosions kept things mildly entertaining. I thought the second boss was pretty annoying, dive-bombing the area while players scrambled to dodge the fire trail. The constant running back and forth just got tedious after a while. Not a fun fight for me at all. When I think of the third boss, the Frenzied Assault was memorable. It's always funny watching someone get absolutely owned by it. And finally, Rygon, the giant mantis smashing through the gates. You had to break through his armour, hit the weak spot, and deal with hive mind. It was definitely unique, but not my thing. The Mantis Siege story, cool enough, but the fights, not an enjoyer personally. I still groan whenever this dungeon shows up in time. Mogusham Palace had a lot of potential. Steeped in the history of the Mogu, setting aside this grand eerie palace filled with statues, carvings, and relics of their old empire. Visually, it absolutely nailed the atmosphere. The dungeon itself, decent I think. It kicks off with the Trial of the King, where you take on twin Mogu warriors one after the other, each with their own unique set of abilities. It had potential to get a little hectic if people weren't paying attention, but nothing to really write home about. It was alright, nothing special. After that, you've got Gekken leading his little Sauroch raiding party into the palace. It could definitely get a bit chaotic here. You had 4 different ads to deal with, all doing their own thing. Stuns, healing spells, shields, the usual recipe for frustration if your group wasn't paying attention. And of course, the longer they stayed alive, the stronger Gekken got, so things could snowball fast. I wouldn't describe this fight as memorable or anything, but it could definitely trip up groups that weren't organised. Shin the Weapon Master though, he was great. Axes flying across the room, spinning blades, fire circling the arena, crossbows launching bolts from the wall. It was good fun. It could get a little overwhelming if your group wasn't paying attention, but I really liked the madness of this fight. Compared to the rest of the dungeon, it was easily the most fun and memorable encounter. Overall, I'd say the highlight of Mogusham Palace was the setting and the lore more than the actual fights. It gave a cool glimpse into the Mogu and their empire. Shadowpan Monastery was one of those dungeons that really nailed the atmosphere. High up in the mountains, surrounded by snow and ancient cold, it felt like the perfect home for the Shadowpan, those elite Pandaran warriors guarding against the shark. The first boss, Goo Cloudstrike, kicks things off. A once revered trainer, now visited by the shark. Got lightning everywhere, his serpent flying around. Visually, it was very cool, but pretty straightforward. Before Master Snowdrift, you had to run this gauntlet, dodging ice arrows and fighting waves of Pandaria. It probably became annoying for people with replayability. I really liked it the first time I saw it. Master Snowdrift himself is a great little martial arts showdown. Classic find the real master stuff with mirror images and fast-paced phases. Then comes the Shah of Violence, and I've got to say this right now, those spikes shooting out of the ground, absolute bullshit. I swear they always went off faster than they should have. Besides that, this fight was okay. Finally, you've got Taran Zu, the Shadowpan leader, battling his own inner hatred. It's a cool concept. You're literally fighting the physical embodiment of his rage while trying to clear the haze and avoid getting dragged into shadow puddles. It's not the hardest fight, but the theme of it really makes it stand out. Overall, I really liked this dungeon. It mixed martial arts, shark corruption, and some solid Pandaria lore into a memorable dungeon. Definitely one of the better ones from Mists of Pandaria in my opinion. This is another dungeon I'm not a giant fan of. It drops you right into the Mantid Assault on one of Pandaria's sacred spots, but I've always found this one just a bit lame personally. First up is Vizier Jinbak, a Mantid alchemist chucking sap everywhere. The whole fight basically revolves around this giant puddle that keeps growing, and your job is to stand in it to shrink it down before he blows the whole thing up. Simple enough concept. Commander Vojak is probably the most memorable fight in here for me. The whole thing kicks off as a proper siege, Mantid swarming the platform and escaped Pandaran prisoners helping throw barrels of tar across the battlefield to slow the assault. You've got adds running in from all directions, swarmer packs, demolishers loaded with explosives ready to blow up the second they die, and those amber wings up top dropping bombs on your head. It can get overwhelming fast if you don't stay on top of things. Eventually, Vojak himself jumps into the fight and darts around slicing through players. This is probably the most fun fight in the dungeon for me. General Pavelat keeps the throwing trend alive. You've got Mantid pouring in, explosions going off, and this time you're lobbing siege explosives right back at them. It's one of those fights where timing actually mattered. You can't just chuck the bombs anywhere. You've got to coordinate, get the positioning right, or risk blowing yourself and your group to pieces. Wingleader Neronok wraps things up with quite a movement-heavy fight. You've got puddles of sticky resin everywhere, patches of caustic pitch slowing you down, and constant gusts of wind trying to knock you off the platform. It's one of those fights where you're basically never standing still, between dodging, repositioning, and trying to keep damage going while Neronok soars overhead. I can't quite explain why I don't get on with this dungeon. It's not dreadful. It blends Mantid aggression with some genuinely engaging mechanics. The interactive bits like throwing pots and explosives definitely add for some fun moments, but overall, the encounters just felt a little repetitive and it never really clicked for me. Scarlet Monastery has always been one of my favourite dungeons from Vanilla WoW. I wouldn't be surprised if it's up there for you too. It's a true icon of the game. From its layout to the bosses, it was the quintessential dungeon for many players, and it holds a special place in the hearts of long-time WoW fans. So seeing Scarlet Monastery return in Mists of Pandaria, reimagined with updated mechanics and a deeper story, was really exciting. The nostalgia hit hard, but the new spin on things kept it feeling fresh and relevant. It's not just a dungeon, it's a symbol of a time in WoW that many of us remember fondly. I enjoyed the inclusion of Lillian Voss. Introduced as the Hooded Crusader, she presents herself as a mysterious figure, watching from the shadows as players make their way through the dungeon. It's only later, after the final boss, that her true identity is revealed, adding a cool layer of story to an already iconic setting. Give us more Scarlet stuff, Blizzard. We'll start off with Scarlet Halls. Scarlet Halls offers a more intense, militarized feel compared to Scarlet Monastery. The dungeon focuses on showing how the Crusaders trained their elite forces and the brutal methods they use to cleanse the world of the undead. The first boss, Houndmaster Braun, uses his trained pack of dogs to hunt down and tear apart enemies. The encounter focuses on managing the aggressive dogs, avoiding the high damage knife throws, and handling the chaos when Braun loses control of his dogs later in the fight. Armsmaster Harlan tests players' tanking and positioning abilities. His leap into the centre of the room, followed by a flurry of AoE damage with his Blades of Light, makes for a dynamic, high-mobility challenge. This fight feels like a modern twist of Herod's brutal combat style. Lastly, Flameweaver Kogler. Players need to prevent burning books from spreading flames throughout the room, while dealing with his constant barrage of pyroblasts, fireball volleys, and dragon breath. Halls is good fun. Scarlet Monastery itself starts in the eerie graveyard, transitioning into the more ominous and iconic cathedral. The dungeon keeps most of its original layout, but with updated mechanics and more immersive storytelling. The first boss, Thalmos the Soulrender, is a mage resurrected as a skeletal being after succumbing to the plague of undeath. He commands apparitions and zombified creatures, raising fallen soldiers of the Argent Crusade to fight against players. Brother Korlov challenges players with his martial prowess. He unleashes fiery attacks like Blazing Fists and Firestorm Kick, which create dangerous fiery zones to avoid. This guy always makes me think of Ivan Drago from Rocky IV.
If you die, you die.
Commander Durand, the new military leader of the Scarlet Crusade, brings speed and brutality to the encounter, using rapid strikes like Flash of Steel and Dashing Strike to inflict heavy damage. and true to tradition, when he falls, Whitemane resurrects him just like she did Mograine, forcing players to deal with both threats at once. Once Whitemane is defeated, Lillian Voss steps forward, revealing herself as the Hooded Crusader. She had directed players to retrieve the Blades of the Anointed, the only weapon capable of permanently killing Whitemane, adding a personal touch to the dungeon's conclusion as she continues her own quest for vengeance against the Scarlet Crusade. Scarlet Monastery is one of those pillars of World of Warcraft that's been loved by players since day one. It's a dungeon that left a lasting mark on the game. Even today, players still clamour for more Scarlet Crusade content. Season of Discovery introduced the Scarlet Enclave raid, allowing players to once again engage with the Scarlet Crusade's lore, this time in a new raid environment. Lillian Voss actually featured as a boss in that raid too. There's a little bit of trivia for you, if you didn't know. Like Scarlet Monastery, I was really excited to see Scholomance make a return in Mists of Pandaria because it brought back memories of my time in Vanilla WoW. Any chance to revisit the old world always makes my heart happy, and this dungeon was no exception. The design of Scholomance is a fantastic mix of nostalgia and new content. The dungeon still carries that eerie atmospheric vibe that made the original so memorable. First up is Instructor Chillheart, a lich who throws a bunch of frost magic around and summons adds. The only interesting part is that after you kill her, her magic escapes into her phylactery, so you've got to break that too, or she'll be back for round 2. It's nothing crazy, but I always thought that extra step with the phylactery gave the fight a bit more character. Next is Janda's Barrow, a mage who uses illusions to confuse players. As the fight progresses, she creates multiple copies of herself and players have to figure out which one's real. I thought this was a cool mechanic. As we progress, Lillian Voss makes another appearance, but this time she's not the guiding hand she was in Scarlet Monastery. Here she's caught in a struggle, haunted by her past and cursed undead nature. Then we face Rattlegore, the reanimated monstrosity from Anderhal. He launches bone spikes at players and summons Soul Flame to cover the room in fire. Players can protect themselves from Bone Spike by interacting with bone piles scattered around the room, which grant a charge of bone armor. It was cool to see Rattlegore again, but this fight was kind of whatever to me. As we continue, Darkmaster Gandling takes control of Voss, forcing her to fight with powerful Runeblade strikes and Darkfire attacks. At 60% health, Lillian's soul is torn from her body, and her soul begins attacking the players with Blazing Soul, which inflicts fire damage to all players, and Fixate Anger, where she targets a single player. In the final phase, Lillian's soul reunites with her body, and she attempts to attack Darkmaster Gandling. Darkmaster Gandling closes out Scholomance, though truthfully, the fight itself never really lived up to the build-up. It's cool seeing him again, especially for old school players, but the actual encounter is pretty straightforward. He throws out a few fire spells, summons his failed students, and every now and then teleports someone off for a harsh lesson, but nothing that really stands out. The real highlight for me was the atmosphere and Lillian Voss's story. Scholomance in Mists of Pandaria brought back a lot of nostalgia for me. It was nice to see again. It still had that creepy vibe, and weaving Lillian Voss's story into it was cool. As a little throwback, I was happy. Overall, the Dungeons of Mists of Pandaria offered a unique blend of nostalgia, new content, and varied gameplay that really defined the expansion. Temple of the Jade Serpent, Stormstout Brewery, Shadowpan Monastery, they all stood out in their own way for me, whether through rich lore, chaotic fun, or deeper emotional stakes. These are the dungeons that I look back on fondly, and they left a lasting impression. The real cherry on the top, absolutely the return of Scarlet Monastery and Scholomance. Coming back to these classic dungeons from Vanilla WoW with updated mechanics and richer storytelling was a real treat. It felt like stepping back into WoW history, but with a fresh spin that kept the experience exciting. The dungeons blended nostalgia with innovation perfectly. Familiar, but with just enough new twists to keep things fresh. But for players chasing something a bit more intense, well, that's what challenge modes were made for. Challenge modes were one of the standout features in Mists of Pandaria. These special time-based dungeon runs pushed players to complete dungeons as fast as possible, while maintaining high levels of performance. Does that sound familiar? The dungeons were altered with additional challenges such as limited resources or more powerful enemies. Players could earn unique rewards, including the coveted challenge mode armor sets, which were cosmetic and highly sought after. This was also one of the first times that players could compare performance across realms, thanks to the introduction of leaderboards. It created a competitive environment where every second counted, and where execution mattered more than raw power. Gear was scaled down, meaning everyone was on an even playing field. What set you apart was skill, strategy, and teamwork. There were also realm best titles for each dungeon, like Siegebreaker or Darkmaster, temporary badges of honor that disappeared when somebody else beat your time. I was never really that into challenge modes personally, or I guess I got into it too late. I only managed to achieve silver, and I sorely regret not getting gold because the Paladin set was incredible. Every time I see someone wearing it, I'm reminded of what I missed. And that was the magic of it. You had to earn it when it mattered, and if you didn't, that was it. You missed a chance. In hindsight, challenge modes were more than just a side feature. They were the prototype, the foundation for what would eventually become Mythic Plus. The scaling, the timer, the emphasis on routing and execution, all of it started here. Even the teleports and prestige titles have their echoes in the systems we use today. Today, the original challenge mode dungeons are gone. Their leaderboards wiped, their titans retired, their rewards unobtainable. But their legacy lives on in every keystone you slot, every plus 15 you push. It all started with a timer, a scaled down set of gear, and 5 players chasing gold. When I think about Mists of Pandaria's raids, the first 3 were okay. Not bad, just not great, especially compared to what followed. But then, Throne of Thunder and Siege of Orgrimmar, those might possibly be in my top 5 raids of all time. Throne for sure. Mogushan Vaults was the first raid of Mists of Pandaria, and looking back, it was fine. Not terrible by any stretch, just not particularly memorable. It had a cool setting. Ancient Titan vaults buried beneath Kunlai Summit. A strong theme, no doubt, but the raid just didn't quite hit the highs I was hoping for coming into a brand new expansion. The Stone Guard was the first boss of Mogushan Vaults, and yeah, it existed. I'm being harsh. It was one of those typical early expansion openings. A trio of big rock guardians, some colour-coded gems, and a shared health pool that piqued things interest. Technically, it wasn't a bad fight. You had positioning to manage, annoying chains linking players together, and the usual stand here, don't stand there routine to keep you awake. I didn't think much of this boss, to be honest, but sometimes that's just the way it is with initial bosses. It was a fine first encounter. Feng the Accursed. Cool name, cool atmosphere, forgettable fight. This guy was basically your standard second boss with phases encounter. He absorbed the power of fallen Mogu champions, so each phase had its own elemental gimmick. Lightning, fire, arcane. Tanks had to mess around with special barriers, the rest of the raid dodged stuff, and eventually, he falls over. It wasn't bad. Mechanically, it was decent, but I can't say it leaves much of a lasting impression. Garajal the Spirit Binder was one of those pleasant surprises. A cool theme, solid mechanics. You had players popping in and out of the Spirit Wheel, cleansing debuffs, and quite not completely wiped the group. It just felt busy, in a good way. The Voodoo Dolls mechanic linked a few players together, and the tank was always one of them. So when they took damage, everyone linked felt it. It made for some tense moments, especially if your healer was slacking or your tank got smacked a little too hard. I've always loved fights with that extra layer of personal responsibility, and the Spirit World phase delivered exactly that. I've got really good memories of this fight, and it's probably my favourite in Mogushan Vault. The Spirit Kings was Blizzard doing their classic counter fight, 4 bosses, each with their own gimmick, cycling in one after the other. Xiang, Meng, Subutai and Xian all had their moments to shine, whether it was walls of soldiers, annoying fear mechanics, or giant shadow wolves chasing you around the room. It wasn't the most exciting fight visually, but I thought this was fun. Now this one, I liked. Elegon was one of those fights that just looked incredible. That big glowing celestial engine room, the Titan architecture. I believe the younger generation today would say, it's giving Algalon. The fight itself was a mix of phases and energy management. Ads flying around, damage boosts kicking in, platforms disappearing if you weren't paying attention. It could be chaotic, but it was very memorable. Elegon had that special visual flair that really made it stand out. I also think Elegon got one of the coolest mounts in the game. Will of the Emperor served as the final boss of Mogushan Vault, and I'll give Blizzard credit, they tried something different here. Instead of your usual standstill and DPS encounter, this one turned into a full-on dance routine. The devastating combo mechanic had players dodging and weaving across the floor to avoid massive attacks. It was basically Mogu Mogu Revolution. It could be a bit chaotic, and the rest of the fight with ads and Titan gas flooding the room wasn't exactly thrilling, but that dance mechanic, that was memorable. Some players loved it, some players hated it, but at least it made the fight stand out. Not the best climax to a raid, I don't mind a bit of rhythmic panic. Mogushan Vaults was a fine start. Mysterious, thematic, and it had a few cool moments. It was great to get insight into the Mogu, learning about their ancient history and their role in the Pandaria storyline. While it wasn't as difficult as the raids that followed like Throne of Siege, that was by design. The only 6 bosses, it had a more contained feel, easing players into the expansion before the real challenges ahead. Heart of Fear was not my favourite raid. I never quite clicked with it. The aesthetic, all amber, sinew, and skittering limbs, felt more grotesque than grand. While that was intentional, it just didn't make the area one I looked forward to revisiting. Imperial Vizier Zorlok kicked things off, flying around his platforms, forcing everyone to hop between them while dodging waves of sonic rings and hiding in protected shields. It was one of those fights where positioning and timing really mattered, and while it wasn't overly difficult, it did a decent job setting the tone for the raid. Blade Lord is pretty memorable, at least to me. The fight itself was decent. What really made it stand out was that infamous wind tunnel phase, getting blasted down a corridor while dodging tornadoes and gusts of wind. It turned into this chaotic little gauntlet that either made you feel like a hero or completely humiliated you in front of your group. The rest of the fight was solid too, the usual teleporting, cone attacks, bleeds, all that stuff, but it's the wind tunnel that people really remember. Heart of Fear wasn't my favourite raid, but I'll give the Blade Lord his props. This fight stuck with me. This fight also stuck with me, for the completely wrong reason. I hated this fight. Weird leg targeting mechanics, and that ridiculous pheromone phase that just turned the whole thing into chaos. It always felt more frustrating than fun. He was swapping pheromones around, trying not to stand in the trails, chopping away at his legs to slow him down, and even if one player slipped up, it could spiral fast. Definitely my least favourite fight in Heart of Fear. But hey, maybe I'm the minority on that one. Any Garrelon enjoyers in the chat? Melgerak sounded cool on paper. Loads of ads, crowd control, bombs to dodge, but in practice, it could get chaotic real fast. You had to keep the ads under control, carefully time your stuns and interrupts, all while dancing around these wind bombs that seemed designed to punish the moment anyone lost focus. This fight was definitely a test of patience and your ability not to rage at that one person who couldn't avoid a bomb. And the Shaper Moonsault was weak. The whole fight revolved around transformations, with players getting turned into these amber constructs and suddenly having to manage willpower, avoid wiping the raid, and actually contribute to the fight. It was chaotic, a bit clunky at times, but definitely memorable. It wasn't the cleanest or most straightforward fight, but I kind of liked that. It felt different, and definitely stood out from the usual pile of ads and boss mechanics. Grand Empress Shexia closed out Heart of Fear, and this fight was hectic. Players getting mind controlled, random fear effects going off, it definitely kept you busy. And as a healer, it's one of those fights where everything just hit like a truck. I thought Shexia had some decent moments. The Shah of Fear corruption kicking in for the last phase really ramped up the chaos, and there was just enough going on to make it feel like a proper finale. While I've praised some of the encounters in here, Heart of Fear felt more like an obligation than a destination. At least to me. Even with a few creative ideas, it lacked the magic or menace that defines a great raid. Terrace of Endless Spring was a refreshing contrast to Heart of Fear, both in tone and structure. Where the previous raid was all sinew and chaos, this one felt serene, focused, and almost sacred. What I liked most about this raid was how direct it was. 4 bosses straight to the end. No sprawling labyrinths, no endless trash packs. Sometimes, less really is more. The first encounter, Protectors of the Endless, was your classic council fight. As each protector fell, the remaining one's health reset and they got stronger, so timing and planning actually mattered. It wasn't overly flashy or complex, but it did what an opening boss should do. Test your coordination and set the tone for the raid. I really liked Sulo, as I'm sure many fellow healers did. At night, he's your enemy, twisted by the Shah, breathing shadows, summoning nightmares. But when the day phase rolled around, suddenly he's your friend. Your whole job flips from dodging mechanics to keeping him alive and cleansing away the corruption. It was simple in theory, but felt satisfying, especially if you were a healer. I always thought it was a cool, memorable fight, and weirdly, I still remember the little achievement where you nurtured a tiny plant. Lei Shi was divisive, and not just because she kept vanishing every 2 seconds. Her high-pitched voice lines, let's just say they were memorable, and the constant hide mechanic basically turned the fight into a frustrating game of where did she go? For DPS, it felt like bursts of actual combat followed by awkward downtime, just spamming AoE and hoping something hit. Then there was the iconic getaway phase, Lei Shi floating around the arena, spraying damage everywhere while the whole group scrambled to keep up. It was chaotic, a bit gimmicky, and probably a low point in an otherwise tight raid. Shah Rafia absolutely nailed the atmosphere. The fight immediately stood out for its scale. You weren't just planted in the middle of the arena, players were getting teleported off to distant platforms, dueling corrupted Pandaren, fighting for their place back in the main battle. It added this cool, almost personal layer to the encounter. For a lot of guilds, Shah Rafia was a proper war, especially early on in the road. It wasn't the most complicated boss on paper, but the room for error was tiny, and when the fight transitioned to the Dread Expanse, that dark corrupted realm, things ramped up fast. All in all, maybe not a flawless final boss, but definitely a dramatic, fitting way to cap off the tier, and thematically, it pulled everything together nicely. Throne of Thunder stood as a defining moment for the game, pushing the boundaries of what a raid could be. Patch 9.2, Blizzard raised the bar. Visually, mechanically, and thematically, it was Mr. Pandaria at its boldest. Throne of Thunder felt like a fusion of Ulduar and Zul'Aman, blending the best of both. Jinrock the Breaker kicked things off. Honestly, solid opener. Straightforward, punchy. You had him tossing players into the wall, even behind his conducted water tools were both a blessing and a curse. Boosting your damage, but making you more vulnerable at the same time. Add in fixating lightning orbs and the usual environmental chaos, and it didn't take long for things to spiral if your group wasn't paying attention. It was a good introduction to the raid. Simple mechanics that ramped up fast. If Jinrock eased you in, Horadon slammed the door behind him. This was the real wall for early progression. A massive armoured dino backed by waves of trollads from every tribe imaginable. The whole fight felt more like a gauntlet than a traditional boss. It punished sloppy execution, hard. A lot of groups never made it past him in the first week. The damage stacked up fast, tanks were under constant pressure, and between the waves of trolls, Direhorn Spirits and War God Jalak showed up late to the party. It was very easy to get overwhelmed. For the lucky few, Horadon also dropped the spawn of Horadon. Council of Elders was pretty crazy. 4 bosses, all with their own mechanics, frost orbs, sand traps, shadow spirits flying around, and the whole time they're rotating through these empowered phases to crank everything up. It was one of those fights where your group had to constantly shift focus, stay alert, and just survive the madness. It wasn't the cleanest fight, but it definitely kept you on your toes. Just before Torto's, beneath the bridge following the Council of Elders, was one of Mr. Pandaria's cheekiest secrets. If you dropped down into a small ring of geezers, you could trigger a hidden objective, bounce between them to build stacks of buff. If you managed to rack up 250 stacks without interruption, you'd receive a letter from Taoshi, along with a ridiculous reward, the Shadowpan Geezer gun. It's a toy water gun, that's it. You spray your friends, you spray their pets, you get 5 minutes of pure aquatic chaos. It's short-ranged, it makes a silly sound, and has absolutely zero combat value, but is absolutely worth it. Go and get it. Getting back to the bosses, it was Torto's where the raid really started to feel fun for me. The fight central mechanic, kicking giant turnstiles into cave bats and interrupting his shatter, was chaotic, satisfying, and genuinely creative. I can still remember one of my guildmates who loved kicking the shells. He'd line them up like a free kick, shout over the heat stick as David Beck, just, you know, maybe with slightly less finesse than Beck's himself. But that's what made Torto special. Silly moments, shared roles, and just enough chaos to spark real memories. You had to juggle bats, interrupts, and those flying shells, turning it into a fun, frantic challenge that actually felt different. So how do you say this boss's name? Magira? Magira? I'm going to say Magira, and Magira was a Hydra with a twist. Rather than a single boss with set phases, the whole fight revolved around repeatedly slaying her heads, and every time you did, the chaos ramped up. You picked the order, but every head that fell made the next more dangerous, until the arena was just a flooded mess of overlapping mechanics. Acid torrents, freezing beams, fire trails, it all punished bad positioning. It wasn't that crazy a fight, but I actually really liked it. It was really good fun to do. The path to Ji-Kun was interesting. If you played Throne, then I'm sure you remember these guys well. Giant snails in the tunnel. Deceptively slow, but fully capable of one-shotting anyone not paying attention. Ji-Kun was easily one of the most inventive encounters in the raid, I think. Set in this huge open chamber with platforms and updrafts, the whole fight revolved around gliding between nests to intercept her eggs before they hatch. The central mechanic had you kicking food globules around to stop the eggs from hatching and prevent feed pools from forming. Meanwhile, some players were flying, others were stuck on the ground dodging acid bugs, healing at will, and trying not to get shoved off the platform by downforce. And if you were lucky, she could also drop a mount. Darumu the Forgotten definitely lived up to his name. A fight so confusing and chaotic that some players have probably blocked it out. The standout moment was the disintegration beam, a rotating death ray slicing through the room while you scramble to find these narrow safe spots. One wrong step, instant death. And if your graphics were turned down or the pattern wasn't clear, well, it felt less like a mechanic and more like a death lottery. You also had the colour phase. Red, blue and yellow spotlights you had to aim perfectly to reveal invisible ads. If you missed one, they'd power up and wipe the frame. It was ambitious, but in reality, it needed flawless coordination and crystal clear visuals, which most groups didn't have. Darumu wasn't bugged, but the fight felt that way sometimes. It demanded precision, but gave you little clarity, on top of healing pressure, debuff management, and constant visual overload. It's no surprise he was one of the hardest bosses of the tier. Primordius was one of the weirder fights in Throne of Thunder. Instead of just pumping out damage, players had to evolve mid-fight by soaking red mutated pools dropped by the ad. Each pool brought you closer to full mutation, and once you were fully evolved, your abilities hit like a truck. I thought it was really cool. It would definitely be something different. Dark Animus was one of the more complex and controversial fights in Throne of Thunder. It wasn't hard to see why. Between the weird mechanics, the sheer number of ads, and all the things your group had to juggle at once, it got overwhelming fast. The whole fight revolved around managing anima golems, each with their own energy levels, while Dark Animus itself slowly powered up the background. You had to carefully transfer anima, keep the golems from linking together, dodge rings of death, and all the while, a big red construct just kept getting stronger. For a lot of guilds, this fight was a massive war. For me, if you can't tell, I hated it. I absolutely hated it. It was always a miserable experience, just an annoying, fiddly mess. Iron Quan, I think that's how you say it, was one of the more fun fights in Throne of Thunder. The whole thing played out like a multi-phase gauntlet as you faced off against Iron Quan and his killer foes, each one bringing their own set of mechanics to the fight. Fire, frost, lightning. You'd be dodging walls of fire, soaked in storms. It was brutal for sure, but I always thought it was a great fight. Fast-paced, chaotic, but still fun, and each phase kept things fresh. The Twin Empyreans, originally known as the Twin Consorts, were one of my favourite fights in Throne of Thunder. The whole fight revolved around night and day phases, switching between Lu Lin and Suen, each bringing their own set of mechanics to the table. At night, you were dealing with sleep effects, shadow beasts, and arcane damage. Then suddenly it's day, and you're dodging fire while Suen ramps up the heat. And during the dusk phase, they fight together for a final push. What I really liked was the Celestial Aid, calling on the powers of the Order Celestial mid-fight to help the group. Depending on which Celestial answer you call, you get different buffs, whether it's healing, damage reduction, movement speed, little boosts that made a real difference. Add some extra strategy to the fight. Most players I raided with enjoyed this one. Not the hardest fight, but a great prelude to Lei Shen. Lei Shen the Thunder King, an original villain that somehow managed to sit alongside Warcraft's biggest names, and honestly, this fight lived up to the hype, I think. The whole encounter revolved around the lightning conduits, power sources scattered around the room, that charged up as the fight went on. Depending on how your group handled them, Lei Shen's abilities got nastier. Phase after phase the pressure built, weaving through lightning strikes, dealing with ads, and the platform itself trying to throw you off. Beating Lei Shen was a big moment for me and my guild. It was a great experience. That said, I know some players walk away underwhelmed. Not because of the fight itself necessarily, but because for a lot of people, Lei Shen just wasn't the name they recognised. If you weren't paying attention to the lore, or didn't follow the Pandarian story closely, you lacked that immediate, iconic impact you get from bosses like Arthas or Deathwing. I thought Blizzard nailed it. A mechanically brilliant fight, wrapped around a villain who, at least for me, earned his place in Warcraft's history. More on Lei Shen later in the video. But of course, there's one more challenge. The secret boss Ra-Den is growing. Only accessible to King Shen. This boss had a limit of 30 attempts per week. Sadly, I don't feel super qualified to talk about Ra-Den, as I never got the chance to beat this fight. But the idea of a secret boss was so cool to me. And at the time, I remember it being a really big deal. For a raid built entirely around Pandaria's lore, without leaning on legacy characters, Throne of Thunder really punched above its weight. Even now, I feel like it doesn't always get the credit it deserves. I'll admit, the group I was playing with at the time definitely added to the fun, but the raid itself had some amazing fights, cool mechanics, and moments that I'll always remember fondly. And finally, Siege of Orgrimmar, the crescendo of the Mists of Pandaria story. A raid that had the weight of the entire Horde vs Alliance conflict riding on it. There was something so cool about this being the raid. It was the Horde's capital, but now as an enemy, it felt different, even from an Alliance point of view. It had the same sort of gravitas as something like Icecrown Citadel, at least for me anyway. We begin with a Mercius, who is a bit of a weird one. You walk into this huge dramatic chamber, see this massive corrupted water elemental, and think, oh yeah, here we go. Siege is kicking off strong. But the fight, bit of a snooze fest. It was basically a big blob that slowly melted apart into smaller blobs. Some you healed, some you killed. And then he reformed, and he did it all over again. To be fair, on Heroic, the fight was tuned a bit tighter, but for most players, this was just a slow, drawn-out intro boss. Not awful, not memorable. The Fallen Protectors, yeah, this one was there. That's probably the best way to describe it. You're thrown into this fight against 3 corrupted Pandaren, He, Sun, and Rook, and it should have felt like a cool character-driven encounter. Pandaren lore, inner darkness, all that stuff. But in reality, it just felt like a council fight that dragged on a bit too long. Mechanically, it wasn't even that complicated. You just had to keep their health roughly even and deal with their little phases when they dropped low. But between the ads, the awkward timings, and the general lack of excitement, it kind of ended up as filler content before the raid really got going. I don't hate this fight by any means, but I also don't remember thinking, ooh, I can't wait to get to Fallen Protectors tonight. It existed, it dropped loot, we moved on. I liked this fight, even though technically we weren't even fighting him. The whole idea here was managing your corruption meter, sending players into little solo challenges to purify themselves before rejoining the fight. It was a good concept. DPS, healers, tanks, everyone had their own trial to pass, and if you messed it up, the corruption flooded the room and things got ugly fast. It wasn't the hardest fight, but I'll give Blizzard credit, it was a creative way to mix personal responsibility with the bigger raid mechanics, and it tied nicely into the whole corruption theme of the expansion. This was where Siege really kicked off for me. The first few bosses, fine, but Shah of Pride, that's when it started to feel like we were really in the thick of it. Mechanically, it was solid. The Pride system made every little mistake feel dangerous. Your Pride stacked up over time, and the higher it got, the nastier things became. Explosions, mind controls, the usual Blizzard, you've messed up, now suffer. I also loved the little Pac-Man moment in this fight, darting around collecting orbs, trying to avoid the Shah. It was simple, but fun. The cool thing about Noroshen hanging around was that he would occasionally bail you out, purifying people and resetting their pride, but if you slipped up too much, the fight could snowball fast. Once you got the boss low enough, it properly escalated. Noroshen gets one shot, the boss goes full rage mode, and the room just descends into chaos. I would maybe describe Shah of Pride as divisive, but I really enjoyed it. I love fights where we have to manage gauges, meters, or other similar mechanics, so Shah of Pride was pretty great for me. It was thematically strong, with mechanics that kept you on your toes, and a satisfying way to wrap up the corruption arc of Pandaria before we kicked down the gates of Orgrimmar. I'm not sure many people have fond memories of this fight. I certainly don't. It should have been exciting. You're finally out in Durotar, the siege is properly underway, the city's right there, and then you're stuck in this drawn-out fight that just kind of drags. The whole thing boiled down to clearing waves of ads, sending teams up the towers, and waiting around until the anti-air turrets were ready to knock Galakras out of the sky. Then, after what felt like an eternity, the dragon finally lands and you finish the job. The second phase, actually fighting Galakras, wasn't awful, but by that point, most of the excitement had been drained out of the encounter. It wasn't a disaster of a fight, but it definitely felt like a roadblock more than a highlight. The moment I saw Durotar and the gates of Orgrimmar, that was exciting. Galakras, not so much. Iron Juggernaut was a big mechanical scorpion parked outside the gates. He looked very cool. The fight itself, it was okay. Lots of dodging, explosions everywhere, landmines rolling around the place. It felt more like you were fighting the area than the boss half the time. Iron Juggernaut had two phases. Assault mode where it stomped around, and Siege mode where it dug in and flooded the area with even more hazards. It wasn't overly complicated, but it got repetitive fast. Similarly to Galakras, I was just happy to be getting through it and finally pushing into the city. The fight itself, not a standout for me, but it was fine. On paper, this should have been one of the coolest fights in Siege of Orgrimmar. You've got these two hulking shamans corrupted by Garrosh's madness, chucking toxic sludge, tornadoes, and general elemental chaos all over the place. It sounds great. It should have been great. The mechanics were basically dodge the endless swirl of garbage on the floor, try not to get cornered by tornadoes, and pray your healers are paying attention. It wasn't that it was hard, it was just ugly. Visually chaotic, mechanically bland, and borderline annoying. If you raided this at the time, you'll remember that most groups didn't even fight the bosses in their actual room. You'd pull them halfway down the street in front of Orgrimmar, kite them around the block, and do the whole fight out in the open. That tells you everything you need to know about how this encounter played. The only real tension was making sure your group didn't accidentally pull a bunch of random trash mobs. Other than that, just another underwhelming checkpoint on the way to Garrosh. I say that Siege is probably in my top 5, but there was definitely some disappointing encounters, and I'm sad to say this was another one of them for me. Before we get to General Nazgrim, there's something we need to talk about. You know what it is. You know why you're here. A quick shout out to what might be the true highlight of Siege of Orgrimmar, saving Gammon. I don't care how many bosses you've downed, how heroic your progression was, nothing felt better than marching into Orgrimmar, cutting through Garrosh's corrupted forces, and freeing our boy Gammon. We found him, locked up, battered, humiliated, and we were the ones who set him free. Watching him rise up, enraged, and ready to throw hands was a beautiful thing. Gammon would lead us on a crusade through Ragefire Chasm, and I thought it was so cool they made it part of the raid. And then we faced General Nazgrim, which sadly wasn't so cool. This fight isn't going to top anyone's most exciting encounters list, but it deserves respect. Nazgrim's been around for ages. He's one of those Horde characters who always showed up in the background. Loyal, reliable, and unfortunately for him, completely stuck under Garrosh's command when the siege kicks off. The fight itself, pretty bog standard, but it had that classic pug killer mechanic baked in, defensive stance. Basically, if you kept hitting him during that, you were just handing him free rage, and the more rage he built, the more brutal his abilities got. From big shockwaves to banners that pumped his power, and of course, that lovely warsong scream that chunked everyone's health. It wasn't the flashiest encounter in the world, but I've always appreciated what it represented. Nazgrim wasn't some power-hungry villain or corrupted abomination. He was a soldier, loyal to a fault. Even when the walls of Orgrimmar were burning around him, he stood his ground, followed his orders, and paid the price for it. You couldn't help but feel a bit bad cutting him down, but at the end of the day, he made his choice. This is where the raid started to feel properly grim. With Malkarok, you finally came face to face with the raw, nasty side of Garrosh's power. His right-hand brute completely juiced up on Old God energy. They absolutely nailed the atmosphere of this fight for me. The arena was dark, oppressive, swirling with corruption. The boss, pure muscle, pure rage, completely loyal to Garrosh. It looked and felt like things were escalating. The fight itself, though, bit of a mixed bag. This fight was tricky for me as a healer. The big gimmick was Ancient Miasma, where your normal health bar gets replaced by an Absorb Shield, so healers couldn't just top you off like usual. They had to constantly rebuild that shield. Once it broke, you were basically one mistake away from being flattened. The floor was constantly covered in swirling zones that exploded if you stood in them, and every so often, Malkarok would slam the ground, sending players flying if they weren't paying attention. It wasn't bad, to be fair. The Absorb mechanic was a cool idea, and on progression, the fight actually felt like a decent challenge, especially for your healers. But after a few weeks of farm, it started to drag. Spoils of Pandaria. Christ. I feel like most people watching will expect my first words on this fight to be, what a pile of crap. Definitely one of the raid's lowest points, and if you've watched my past retrospectives, you'll know how excited I get when it comes to splitting up the raid groups. This just wasn't great. It felt lazy. The whole encounter takes place inside this big storage room full of crates hoarded from across Pandaria. The raid splits in half, with one group going left and the other going right. Each side works their way through waves of mobs by opening crates and dealing with whatever pops out. The goal? Open enough crates, kill enough mobs, and max out this gauge so you can pull the lever. When both groups finish their side, you move on to the next room and do it all over again. Rinse and repeat, baby. The most buzz I got from this fight is knowing we'd finished our side first. This was just disappointing and very uninspiring. If you've ever wondered what it's like to be trapped in a prison with an enraged, corrupted dinosaur while your entire raid slowly descends into panic, welcome to Thok. The moment you walk into that cell block and see him chained up, you know it's going to be one of those fights. And sure enough, it's pure stress from start to finish. The whole encounter basically revolved around deafening screech. Thok would let out this horrible shriek that gets harder and harder the longer the phase goes on, and if your timing wasn't perfect, it would just straight up flatten your raid. Then, once the scent of blood got to him, blood frenzy kicked in. At that point, all strategy is out the window. He'd break loose, go full Jurassic Park, and start chasing people down. If he caught you, game over. And of course, during all of this, you had to break into cages around the room and free prisoners to help deal with him. Depending on which prisoner gets eaten, he'd absorb a different elemental ability. Is this fight memorable? Absolutely. Is it fun? That depends entirely on your group's pain tolerance. Black Fuse is awesome. A lot of people will tell you that. Most will probably tell you it's the jewel in the crown for Siege. Some say it's overrated, and I kind of get that by today's standards. At the time, Black Fuse was good. Really good. This wasn't your standard boss in the middle of the room encounter. Black Fuse turned the whole fight into organised chaos. You had ads flooding in, and players getting flung onto conveyor belts to destroy priority targets. Mechanically, it was very clever. The belt team had real responsibility. Mess that up, and suddenly your raids get melted by lasers or blown apart by mines. It was one of those fights where every role had something important to deal with, and everything felt connected. Was it a bit much? For its time, maybe? Is it overhyped nowadays? That's probably fair to say. But for its time, Black Fuse was genuinely impressive. The Klaxi Paragons should have been huge. The Klaxi were built up across the whole expansion. You spent all of Dread Waste awakening these guys, working with them, and for the most part, they're on your side. Sort of. So when they show up in Siege of Orgrimmar, that should have been a massive moment. The betrayal, the lore payoff, the realization that they were never fighting for Pandaria. They were fighting for their empire, and the old gods were part of that plan all along. My problem with this fight, it just wasn't that special. Mechanically, it was a bit of a mess. You always had 3 Paragons active at a time, and every time you killed one, another would jump in to take their place. Each Paragon had their own weird little gimmick, so unless you were raiding at a high level, most of your group barely understood half of what was happening at any given moment. It wasn't terrible, but it definitely felt like a letdown considering how much potential the Klaxi had as characters. Blizzard had all these cool designs, great voice acting, a rich little subplot, and it just sort of fizzled into a forgettable pre-Garrosh roadblock. The Klaxi deserved better. 13 bosses later, we finally made it. Garrosh Hellscream, the final boss, the big one. But before the fight even starts, you've got to go through the weekly ritual, the Thrall RP. I thought this was great. Once. It fast zoomed into the background. Zone out, alt tab, make a drink. It was a staple of the Siege experience. As for the fight itself, I really liked it. It was long, it was intense, it dragged on forever by the time you were progressing it, but that's what final bosses should be. You start off in the throne room, fighting Garrosh and his Corpron troops, with Siege engineers trying to fire off Ironstones. If you timed them right, they were basically giant murder pinballs flying across the room. It was really cool getting pulled into the realms of Yasharaj, corrupted visions of Pandaria warped by Shah energy. Fighting your way through those twisted memories while Garrosh tried to drain more power from the heart was a great touch. And then of course, Phase 3. This is when Garrosh fully embraces the old god corruption. The room warps, the abilities get nastier, and suddenly, it's just pure chaos. Empowered mind control spreading throughout the raid, those desecrated weapons choking up the floor. It's a proper final stretch. But if you were raiding on Heroic, what we'd now call Mythic, there was one more surprise waiting. Phase 4. The moment Garrosh hits 10% health, the stage transitions, and suddenly you're fighting him in a corrupted version of Stormwind City. As an Alliance player, that was something. Seeing Stormwind completely twisted by Shah corruption was both awesome and horrifying. I still think it's a very slept-on transition. I still have the screenshot of our very first kill on Garrosh. Just ignore the fact I'm playing Horde in it. We really don't need to talk about that. Was Garrosh perfect? No. Did it drag? Yes. But as a final boss to wrap up Mists of Pandaria in Siege, it delivered. As a raid, Siege did exactly what it set out to do. It was big, it was ambitious, and it actually felt like you were part of a siege, tearing through the city, storming the gates, and finally facing off with Garrosh. It delivered on scale, atmosphere, and story payoff. Not every fight was a hit, obviously. Spoils, Klaxi, Galacrest dragged it down quite a bit, but there were standout moments too. Black Fuse was a proper raid check, Thok was chaos incarnate, and the final phase with Garrosh and a corrupted Stormwind, I loved it. Was it the best final raid that WoW has ever seen? No. But for me, I think it has the same emotional weight and gravitas as an Icecrown Citadel, and as a conclusion to Pandaria's story, as a proper send-off to an expansion full of surprises, yeah, it worked. Thunderforging was introduced in Mist of Pandaria, specifically tied to the Throne of Thunder raid. Thunderforged loot was a rare bonus added to normal and heroic items, increasing their item level by 6. For example, normal mode loot would drop to 522, but if it was Thunderforged, it would jump to 528. Heroic loot had a similar build, with items going from 535 to 541. The idea behind it was simple: make loot feel exciting, offer a sense of progression beyond just item level, and give that extra wow factor when you suddenly hit with Thunderforged. Some would say this added an exciting element to loot, that possibility of getting a slightly better version of your gear, keeping the grind rewarding without feeling overwhelming. But the system didn't stop there. It continued in Siege of Orgrimmar, where Warforging was introduced, and by the time Legion rolled around with Titanforging, it was crazy. That's when it started to feel like the carrot on a stick loot chase went a bit too far. I have a chapter dedicated to this in my Legion video, which you can click somewhere on the screen if you're interested. But the long and short of it is, while Mists of Pandaria felt more manageable with Thunderforging, by the time Legion and BFA came, it felt like the hunt for best in slot gear was never ending. You could get lucky and have gear Warforge or Titanforge, but sometimes you get nothing. It became frustrating, and for me, it was a classic case of, well, you're never going to be done, because loot could always roll higher. We had a few items introduced that added a bit of extra excitement to the loot run. The Elder Charm of Good Fortune, Mogul Rune of Fate, and Warforged Seal. These essentially all work the same way, just for different raid tiers. You'd use the charm, and if you were lucky, you'd get an additional spec-specific item from the boss's loot table. If not, you just get some gold instead. I didn't hate the coin rolling aspect. I thought it was fine. It wasn't too crazy like what Titanforging became. It added a fun element of surprise and a little reward for the time invested in raiding. But the introduction of both coin rolling and Thunderforging really showcased a shift in both raid design and reward systems. One that changed the way Blizzard experienced loot progression, and one that Blizzard have certainly dialed back in recent years. To wrap up, the first 3 raids were fine in their own right. They provided decent, solid content, and felt like a good setup for what was to come. But when it came to Throne of Thunder and Siege of Orgrimmar, those were the raids that truly stood out for me, as I'm sure they did for everyone. They were just levels above. They were brilliant experiences with well-crafted mechanics and memorable bosses. I rate both of these raids very highly. As much as I love Siege of Orgrimmar, it wasn't perfect, and there's one thing, or rather one number, that sadly holds it back.
Your turret has been destroyed.
As much praise as Mists of Pandaria deserves, it's impossible to ignore the loudest noise, and for me, that was Siege of Orgrimmar lasting 13 months. For over a year, players were stuck in the same raid tier, running the same bosses, with no new content on the horizon. It remains the longest content drought in World of Warcraft history, and that left a mark. At the time, this felt like a breaking point for many players. Subscriptions dropped, guilds fell apart, burnout was rampant. Many players unsubscribed. Others re-rolled alts, dabbled in PvP, or just logged in and out of habit. It didn't matter how good Siege was, and it was a well-designed raid. Thematically rich, mechanically varied, and narratively satisfying. But even the best raid can become a prison when it's all you've got for over a year. In some ways, I think it soured the final impression of Mists of Pandaria, which up to that point had delivered content at a strong, steady pace. And I think every expansion has its air quotes hate landmark. That one thing that players latch onto when they look back. When you think of Warlords, you think of Garrisons. BFA, you think of Azerite gear or the grind. Shadowlands, you think of, well, take your pick. But for Mists, that landmark became Siege. Not because of its design, but because of its duration. That's what makes the expansion's legacy feel so complicated in hindsight. People often remember the burnout more than the brilliant rollout of content it came before. Mists had one of the most consistent content cadences in WoW's history, until the very end. That sudden silence created a sense of abandonment that carried over into Warlords of Draenor. By the time Warlords launched, players were desperate for something new. That anticipation helped it explode straight out the gate, but it also meant it had even further to fall when things didn't live up to the hype. Even Blizzard later acknowledged that the Siege drought was a misstep. It's a firm reminder that even a great expansion can be overshadowed by how it finishes, and for Mists, the final chapter just lasted far too long. While Mythic difficulty wouldn't officially launch until Warlords of Draenor, the seeds of raiding's evolution were planted in Mists of Pandaria. Patch 5.4 introduced a groundbreaking new concept, flexible raiding. Unlike the rigid 10 or 25 player formats of normal and heroic, flex mode scaled dynamically based on group size, anywhere from 10 to 25 players. This would later become 30 players. It meant more freedom, who you had, not who you were supposed to have. For friends, guilds, and family groups, this was revolutionary. It was a sign that Blizzard understood not every raid could fit neatly into strict boxes, but not every change of raiding landed quite so smoothly. Looking for Raid, or LFR, was in full force by this point, giving casual players access to raid content they'd never been able to experience before. And for many, that was amazing. You could queue up, see the story, earn loot, and feel like you were part of the expansion's big home. But LFR also came with a cost. It diluted the sense of accomplishment of raiding one's camp, turning what used to be epic, hard-fought battles into something that felt more like a tourist mode. The fights were easier, coordination was minimal, and behaviour often broke down into toxic chat or players just going AFK. To some, it made raids more accessible. To others, it made them feel disposable. LFR wasn't a disaster, far from it, but it introduced a cultural shift in how players engage with endgame content, one that we're still feeling today. Then came the next shift. The rigid structure of 10 to 25 caused endless balance headaches. Bosses could feel wildly different depending on their raid size. Flex raiding in Patch 5.4 already showed there was a better way. Blizzard wanted consistency at the top end, and with Mythic, they introduced a single fixed 20-player format. While Siege wasn't originally designed for Mythic, it was retrofitted with the new structure, giving players an early taste of what was to come. It wasn't just a mechanical shift, it was a cultural one. Raiding suddenly became more organised, more demanding, and for many, more exclusive. For tight-knit 10-man guilds, Mythic felt like a death sentence. You either doubled your roster or fell behind, and a lot of groups, sadly, didn't survive that jump. Even today, there's a devoted crowd that argues Cataclysm and Mists offered the best raid experience thanks to 10-man heroic. Myself included, I still quietly hope for an introduction to 10-man Mythic someday. Mythic didn't just change how raids were tuned, it reshaped how guilds operated, how rosters were built, and how the world's first race evolved into a global spectacle. Raiding became more accessible and more refined, but also more fragmented. For some, the soul of those tight-knit 10-man runs never truly returned. Siege of Orgrimmar didn't just close the curtain on Mists of Pandaria, it closed the chapter on a more intimate era of raiding. The Timeless Isles was one of the most revolutionary zones Blizzard had ever designed. Unlike traditional endgame areas built around daily quests and structured storylines, the isle was intentionally unstructured. A sandbox of secrets, rare spawns, elite creatures, and jumping bubbles. There were no quest hubs guiding you everywhere. Instead, it encouraged players to explore freely, stumble into bosses, group up on the fly, and discover its secrets at their own pace. It was completely non-linear. You didn't arrive with a checklist, you arrived with curiosity. Players hunted down treasure chests scattered across the island, challenged world bosses like the Celestial and the Ordos, and scoured the jungle for rare spawns that offered hefty rewards. One of the most famous was Hulon, a shadowy black cloud serpent who patrolled the upper walkways of the island. He became a legend among mount hunters, with players camping his spawn for hours at a time, hoping for the rare drop of the thundering onyx cloud serpent. In the central courtyard of the island, players could face off against the 4 August Celestials in a rotating set of encounters, powerful world bosses that rewarded high-end loot and added a sense of ritual to the isle's weekly reset rhythm. Ordos in particular stood out, not just for his imposing presence as a lost Yongle fire god, but because he was locked behind the legendary Cloak questline. Only players who had completed that long journey could even step into his domain, making him one of WoW's few bosses gated behind some personal achievements. Certain treasures, like the elusive blazing chest, were locked behind challenging bosses, time puzzles, rewarding not just curiosity, but mastery of the island's layers. The shared tag system on the leads and bosses increasing effort, and there was a constant sense of immersion gameplay. Players pinging map locations in chat, forming groups on the fly, and coming together organically. It was a living, breathing world, and it worked beautifully. The primary reward system came through timeless coins, a currency that could be used to purchase gear, vanity items, and powerful account-bound tokens. These timeless gear pieces made the zone incredibly alt-friendly, a perfect catch-up system that didn't feel mindless. You could gear multiple characters just by exploring. You also couldn't fly here, and that was no accident. Blizzard wanted you to walk, to engage, to be pulled into events instead of flying over them, and it worked. The terrain was layered, filled with hidden areas like the Cavern of Lost Spirits, the Ornate Sanctuary, or the eerie underwater pits. After the heavily structured dailies of the Shadowpan, the Golden Lotus, and everything else, Timeless Isle felt like a breath of fresh air. Less grind, more discovery. And for those seeking even more danger, the Centre of Eternal Agony allowed players to turn on each other for bloody coins, creating unexpected PvP encounters even on otherwise peaceful servers. Suddenly, the Isle wasn't just about exploring, it was about watching your back. And then, of course, there were the frogs. Tucked away on the southeastern shores of the Isle, players discovered a dense cluster of elite frogs. They weren't glamorous, they were professional, dropping timeless coins, BOEs, and reputation items in bulk. It didn't take long for players to realise that with enough AoE, these frogs became goldmine. And so began the age of frog farming, an unintentional but wildly popular grind that turned into a social activity of its own. Players would group up, load out waves of frogs, and joke endlessly about it. It wasn't something Blizzard planned. That was the beauty of the time style. It allowed players to make their own goals, their own fun, and sometimes that fun just happens to be frogs. And then, my favourite part, there was the spirit of Emperor Xiaohao. At the heart of the Timeless Isle, his essence lingered. As mentioned earlier, in a series of stunning animated shorts, Xiaohao's journey unfolds before us. These cinematics tell the story of his personal transformation, how he overcame fear, doubt, anger, and pride, ultimately becoming the mist that shielded Pandaria from the outside world. These moments were powerful, poetic, and they provided the expansion with a rare moment of introspection in its final chapter. His story, like the Isle itself, invited us to reflect. And just next door, the Celestial Tournament, a brutal gauntlet for pet battlers, which was covered earlier in the Pet Battles chapter. To sum up the Timeless Isle, it was an experiment in freedom. It trusted the player to make their own fun, and that trust helped inspire many of World of Warcraft's future open world designs. Its DNA can still be felt in zones such as Tanan Jungle, the Broken Shore, Argus, Mechadon, Zereth Mortal, each borrowing pieces of that unstructured brilliance. I'd like to finish up this retrospective with the villain, and I think Lei Shen absolutely deserves his own chapter, and here's why. He wasn't a program, a corrupted hero, but a thing back to the end of nostalgia. Lei Shen was something else entirely. He was original. In a game filled with demons and dragons, Lei Shen stood out. Not as a cosmic threat, but as a man, a mortal who dared to steal the power of the Titans and reshape the world in his image. He wasn't gifted with strength, he took it. By force, by ambition, by sheer unrelenting will. That's what made him terrifying and believable. Long before Garrosh or Sylvanas ever flirted with ultimate power, Lei Shen had already claimed it. He defeated Ra-Den the Titan Keeper and used his knowledge to build an empire, not just through conquest, but through infrastructure, through control, through fear. He wasn't some mad tyrant ranting about chaos or vengeance. He believed in order, in a structured, obedient world where he alone decided what was right. For a time, it worked. The Mogu Empire flourished, roads were built, laws were enforced, rebellions were crushed. The Isle of Thunder told its story piece by piece, through scrolls, ruins, cutscenes, and chose narration. And the more you learned, the more chilling he became. It's what the villains were told to hate. It's a villain that he understood, and that's what made him great. The entire reign was his legacy, a storm-choked tomb built on dominance. Every encounter echoed his philosophy, brutality, discipline, obedience. What I love most is that Lei Shen wasn't a one-note tyrant. Similarly to Garrosh, he wasn't corrupted, he wasn't being manipulated, he chose this path, and in that way, he was the perfect villain for Pandaria, a continent defined by internal struggle, emotional imbalance, and the consequences of unchecked power. But even in death, he left his mark, through Ra-Den, through the secrets beneath the island, through the whispers of the Titans. His shadow stretched far beyond the grave. In many ways, he was the first real taste of the cosmic scale that would shape future expansions like Legion and Shadowlands, and he did it all without ever being a household name. Blizzard deserve a ton of credit here. They created someone new, someone original, and they made him matter. No fan nostalgia, no callbacks, just bold storytelling, clever design, and the courage to let a villain stand on his own. Lei Shen didn't need a legacy to start with. He built one.
Marley, Tesla, fried chicken, party to Hollywood Hills. This song, oh my god, that new beat. God, is this real? Buddy.
Wait, is it fucking Pink Ward? Yeah, hi Pink Ward! I'm Drutut. Yeah. Amazing cosplay, bro. Please give me a Shaka impression.
I'll make you disappear.
That's great, bro. Wait, is it fucking Pink Ward? Yeah, hi Pink Ward! I'm Drutut. Yeah. Amazing cosplay, bro. Please give me a Shaka impression.
Do this? I just felt like there was an earthquake that happened. Oh my god. I completely forgot it does that when I jump. Do this? I just felt like there was an earthquake that happened.
The stock market will close at an all-time high. But for now, some updated information about the Jamestown robberies as Christopher is live on the scene. Chris, what do you have for us?
Okay, we got a little news reporter action going on.
Thanks, Michael. The stock market will close at an all-time high. But for now, some updated information about the Jamestown robberies as Christopher...
We have 16 Zen 5 cores, 32 threads, up to 5.67 gigahertz boost, a large 80 megabyte cache. This is the fastest consumer CPU in the world. We have 16 Zen 5 cores, 32 threads.
How did I do?
47 seconds, baby.
I can do better. I can do better.
Yeah, you can
Ready?
definitely do better. Yeah, go for it. I'm not timing her.
How did I do?
47 seconds, baby.
I can do better. I can do better.
Yeah, you can
Ready?
definitely do better. Yeah, go for it. I'm not timing her.
How did I do?
If you go to any Bowser level in the original Super Mario Bros. And jump and hit the hammer and Bowser at the same exact time, it looks like you're blinking because Bowser actually hits you, but you also beat him. So when you start the next level, check this out. It looks like I'm Big Mario, but just one touch and I'm dead. If you go to any Bowser level in the original Super Mario Bros. And jump and hit the hammer and Bowser at the same
Stop pressing the button when no sound is being played.
I don't know why. Maybe I had a dream about this, but I want to ask maybe if... Theoretically, what would happen if you put a sparkler in between your butt cheeks? Possible? Doable?
Yo, excuse me. You're like really cute.
Bro, this is my girlfriend, really?
No. I wasn't talking about you. I was talking about you, bro. I was talking about you.
You were talking about me?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
You think so?
Yeah, bro, you're cute as hell.
How are you, man?
Bro, preach. Damn.
Let me think. Riot! Let me think.
An enemy has been slain.
Riot!
You ready?
Yeah.
You ready?
Yeah.
You ready?
Yeah.
You ready? You ready?
Okay, we've made a decision. This is 1 page long.
Yes.
And it's the majority decision?
That's right.
Were any of you gonna sign it?
Well, technically, none of us have to sign it.
Okay, so just to be clear, on this case, all 6 of you are siding with the Trump administration.
Yes.
This allows them to deport migrants to countries they're not even from, including South Sudan.
Yes.
I wrote the minority opinion. The 3 of us fully disagree with the majority. This is 20 pages long.
Allow me to summarize. The administration is trying to send migrants to a nation the State Department considers too unsafe for all but its most critical personnel.
Like South Sudan.
Exactly. I also wrote that this is literally a violation of the European Convention on Human Rights because the government is sending people to countries where they could be subjected to torture. Maybe this is a one-off thing. Maybe the government will start adhering to the Fifth Amendment and allow for due process in all these cases.
His administration just posted "Fire up the deportation planes" and the Supreme Court's decision next to a GIF of Trump dancing. Okay, we've made a decision. This is 1 page long.
Yes.
And it's the majority decision?
That's right.
Were any of you gonna sign it?
Well, technically, none of us have to sign it.
Okay, so just to be clear, on this case, all 6 of you are siding with the Trump administration.
Yes.
This allows them to deport migrants to countries they're not even from, including South Sudan.
Yes.
I wrote the minority opinion.
The 3 of us fully disagree.
Blacksmith, prepare to join thy king's army.
Oh, my back hurts.
You have to stretch.
Like, you don't stretch out before, like, extracurricular activities?
I do. Pretty
What kind of extra?
Before, I have to stretch.
Oh,
I
no
tore-
offense, but like if that was happening, I think I hate this word, but I think I'd get the ick. Like you're just like
No, but
over
you
there,
don't.
like,
Okay, you don't. It's not like you do it. Okay, you're not gonna be in bed in the bedroom just like, yeah, you ready for this? Yeah, like you do that in your private time. You know what I'm saying?
Sorry.
What the?
I think
So you
Okay,
have you ever been with a dude and he gets like a leg cramp?
no.
That Dean, has that ever happened to you?
Brother, I tore my hip flexor, my glute muscle, like literally
What are y'all
torn.
doing? Oh my god. Okay.
Dude, you know what? No, so remember, Arthur, remember when your neck hurt?
Yeah.
Bree was probably drier than the f***ing desert. Because you're like, oh, my neck, I can't move. Oh, my back
You
hurts.
have to stretch.
Like, you don't stretch out before, like, extracurricular activities?
I do. Pretty much.
Today at work, a coworker warned me that my next patient's owner wanted to give us a heads up because their cat is homophobic. I thought it was a joke, genuinely. Oh, haha, quirky little personality trait for your 18-pound beast. But no, that cat saw me and immediately chose violence. And not in a hissy, swatty, scaredy way. I mean violence. I had Kevlar gloves on. Kevlar. And he still bit them like he was trying to challenge me to a duel. And then the owner goes, yeah, he just really seems to go after gay people. It's very strange. Like this is a normal Tuesday sentence. And I want to emphasize something. I want to be very clear. The cat was wearing a pride flag collar, apparently as exposure therapy. So now I'm bleeding from the hand while holding this rainbow bedazzled hate crime gremlin who is vibrating with rage, and the owner is like, we're working on it. Working on what? He's not a little confused. He's actively waging war. That cat saw me and made a moral judgment, and I lost. Today at work, a coworker warned me that my next patient's owner wanted to give us a heads up.
We finally damaged the indestructible phone. All it took was dropping it from a 100-foot drop. But wait, did we actually damage it? Because this crack is not on the screen itself, but rather on the external shell. Oh, I know. If we look at the battery, we can see that that impact caused a giant crack. So there's no way that'll work. Wait a minute. This still works? What in the world did Nokia feed these phones? The only damages here appear to be cosmetic, like the external shell and the keyboard and, like, I guess, the battery, but that still works. So if that's what happens after a 100-foot drop, what do you think happened to this one? Ooh. We finally damaged the indestructible phone. All it took was dropping it from a 100-foot drop. But wait, did we actually damage it? Because this crack is not on the screen itself, but rather on the external shell. Oh, I know. If we look at the battery, we can see that that impact caused a giant crack. So there's no way that'll work. Wait a minute. This still works? What in the world did Nokia...
Yeah, behind you.
Yo, who are you, man?
1 second, guys. What's up, dude? This is my apartment.
Wait, you live here? Like, you're Haley's roommate?
Yep, it's a 2-bedroom, bud.
Okay, well, she said she lives with Sean. I thought Sean was a girl.
Can't be assuming people's genders, man. It's 2022.
Well, I just find it weird that a guy is living with a girl.
Really not weird at all. It's quite normal, actually.
Where I come from, that's pretty weird. So, like, are you gay?
Bro, I'm playing Call of Duty at 9 a.m. on a Saturday.
Well, do you have a girlfriend then?
Does it matter?
Yeah, it does, man. Like, I want to know, is there any shenanigans going on between you and Haley?
What are you, the FBI? Define shenanigans.
Have you hooked up?
We're roommates, man. Get it through your head. Like, I know the exact time to the second that she takes her daily dumps.
Whoa, ew, dude. I don't need to hear
Well, I didn't need to hear your loud-ass grunting at 2 in the morning last night. I mean, I couldn't sleep because you sounded like a schizophrenic warthog. It's like, dude, I know it feels good, but doesn't feel that good.
Okay. So why didn't you tell me your roommate's a guy?
What's the big deal?
What's the big deal? A guy living with you? Like, come on, Haley.
Okay, you need to relax. Like, Sean is literally harmless.
All right, well, I'm leaving. Like, figure this out, dude.
That guy fucking blows. By far the worst guy you've ever brought back. I mean, come on, Hales. You're better than that. You're right. God, he was so terrible in bed.
Really?
I couldn't tell.
Stop
All
it.
right, come chill. Play some Mario Kart.
Yes, I call Yoshi.
No, I'm Yoshi. Well, I beat you last time, so start it up. I'll be right back. 9:32 and 47 seconds. Right on time. Yeah, behind you.
Yo, who are you, man?
1 second, guys. What's up, dude? This is my apartment.
Wait, you live here? Like, you're Haley's roommate?
Yep, it's a 2-bedroom, bud.
Okay, well, she said she lived with Sean. I thought Sean was a girl.
Can't be assuming people's genders, man. It's 2022.
Well, I just find it weird that a guy is living with a girl.
Really not weird at all. It's quite normal, actually.
Where I come from, that's pretty weird. So, like, are you gay?
Bro, I'm playing Call of Duty at 9 a.m. on a Saturday.
Well, do you have a girlfriend then?
Does it matter? Like,
yeah, it does, man. Like, I want to know, is there any shenanigans going on between you and Haley?
What are you, the FBI? Define shenanigans.
Have you hooked up?
We're roommates, man. Get it through your head. Like, I know the exact time to the second that she takes her daily dumps.
Whoa, ew, dude. I don't need to hear
Well, I didn't need to hear your loud-ass grunting at 2 in the morning last night. I mean, I couldn't sleep because you sounded like a schizophrenic warthog. It's like, dude, I know it feels good, but doesn't feel that good.
Okay. So why didn't you tell me your roommate's a guy?
What's the big deal?
What's the big deal? A guy living with you? Like, come on, Haley.
Okay, you need to relax. Like, Sean is literally harmless.
All right, well, I'm leaving. Like, figure this out.
That guy.
So you want to ban any laws about AI for 10 years? Yep. So you're writing a law to ban a law? We're just banning the concept of a law. What? Some of these states are trying to totally kneecap AI. Like, get this, some states are trying to ban misinformation about the election. And you like misinformation? Oh, and get this, one of these crazy states run by these pink hair liberals are trying to ban deepfakes that pretend to be creators and artists. I really wouldn't consider Tennessee a state run by pink hair liberals. Listen, the bill passed the House with a lot of support. I didn't read it. Didn't you vote for it? Why would you admit that? But what if AI goes around and starts unaliving people? Shouldn't states be able to pass laws about that? Well, unaliving is already illegal. Who was going to jail? The AI model? So you want to ban any laws about AI for 10 years? Yep. So you're right.
I think they're like here-ish, south of this town. So let's do it now while I'm here. Fuck it, I walked through it.
Oh, God! What? No! What the f— 6? I've never even seen a 2.
I think they're like here-ish, south of...
Do you want a surprise or a countdown?
I don't understand.
Okay, bye. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Not you.
What sound does the letter A make?
Three, two, one. Yes, you are. Do you want a surprise or a countdown?
I don't understand.
Okay, bye. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Not you.
What sound does the letter A make?
I will be honest, there was a point where I was very jealous. I was very, very jealous of XQC and how much money he had, and I thought, how do I do it, bro? How do I make it big? But then when he started tweeting how sad he was, and there was like, he's playing like Ever Since, like Blade songs on his Instagram story, then I was like, okay, no, like I don't want that much money. That's just sad. Have you seen his hair? Like, it's over. It's over. Look at this. Completely fine. Completely fine. Look at that. Look at that. I am fine. I will be honest, there was a point where I was very jealous. I was very, very jealous of XQC and how much money he had, and I thought, how do I do it, bro? How do I make it big? But then when he started tweeting how sad he was, and there was like, he's playing like Ever Since, like Blade songs on his Instagram story, then I was like, okay, no, like I don't want that much money. That's just sad. Have you...
Is this the part where he kills me? This is the part where...
This isn't something that I've talked about before on my account because it's more of a personal thing that I struggle with, but I felt like this is a good time to kind of come clean about it. I won't plug in my phone unless it's going to charge at the maximum charging speed. My phone could be at 3%. If I see one of these, it's not getting plugged in. If I don't recognize the charging block, I will unplug it and read this fine print until I figure it out. And even if a charging block does charge fast enough, if it has multiple ports and the power is shared between the ports, I'll only use one so it charges as fast as possible. I mean, that's the real reason why I don't like wireless chargers. 15 watts? Hell no. This isn't something that I've talked about before on my account because...
You do pelvic exams on patients while they're under anesthesia? Don't worry, it's fine. We're already in there rooting around. Why not let the med students get some practice? What I am hearing is that patients come in for an unrelated operation, and when they're unconscious, you are giving them a pelvic exam?
No, that's not the whole story.
Oh, good. I knew it. We also do breast and rectal exams. Oh my god. You're at least getting permission from the patients, right? We get implied consent. Medical speak. She probably shouldn't have been getting an operation done where there are med students, and she didn't expect the med students to learn. This can't possibly be a real thing that's still happening in June of 2025. It really is fine. Only 21 states have outlawed it. That's not even half the states. That's the opposite of fine. A 2023 study found that 20% of teaching hospitals admitted that they still do this. And a PubMed study from 2024 found that 41% of medical students admitted that they had given a pelvic exam to an unconscious patient, estimating that over half of those were probably without explicit consent. You're saying that this is still a somewhat common medical practice. That's how I know it's fine. And the medical students are just like, yeah, this is cool, let's do that. Well, if they ask if the patient consented and they hadn't, that might get me in trouble. And that's not fine. Get you in trouble. So there are rules against it. In 2024, CMS did update their guidelines to require all hospitals get explicit consent from patients. Okay, so that should fix it. It's illegal, or if you do it, a patient can sue you. No. It's not a law. You can't sue me. It's just that CMS can withhold Medicare and Medicaid funding from hospitals if they find out that they're not following the guidelines. So if I'm going under anesthesia, I'm just rolling the dice. No, you're fine. Why am I fine? Well, it mainly happens to women, so you don't need to worry. Why would that make me worry? What are people supposed to do? All right, well, if people really are concerned, you just bring someone with you. You can just bring a friend into surgery? No, it's just that having someone with you means more eyes, and I don't want to get caught. Or you could be, like, really pesky. The last time that you called me pesky, I was just advocating for myself. Ugh. But yes, just be explicit. Ask them what's being done, who's going to touch you, tell them to note your chart that you don't consent. Well, what if I just wrote that on my intake paperwork? Yeah, that one's probably the hardest for us to ignore, and it gives you some legal standing if you realize that something did happen. Realize? Are you saying that people don't always know? No, not usually. God damn. I was really hoping to finally end one of these videos on a positive note.
Don't try to Electron the big wheeler in Mario Kart World. Oh, it's like he knew the electrons were coming.
Electrons! Check this out. Heat. Whoops.
Boo! You stink! Don't try to Electron the big wheeler in Mario Kart World. Oh, it's like he knew the electrons were.
So the reason why Blue Green FL is so broken is not because it gives you access to super long range poke or like this immense team fighting power. That's not it. The main reason you pick Blue Green FL is because it gives you access to a mechanic that literally shouldn't be in the game. It's actually slightly game breaking in a way. Everything revolves around Infernum Q. You just auto Q, and then with your offhand, you get the Caloran proc and you proc the mark. That's pretty simple. But the thing that makes it so busted is only really available once you have enough attack speed. Take a look at this, right? You see what happened there? We basically cheated in another auto attack between the mark proc and the offense interaction. The reason this works is because the amount of time it takes for your offhand auto to get to the target to apply the mark takes longer than your auto attack timer to reset. And this combo is so ridiculously fast too, right? Like if you play against an AD carry that is like with 70% HP under the tower, you just auto Infernum Q, Calibrum ults, you are done. So the reason why Blue Green FL is so broken is not because it gives you access to super long range poke or like this immense team fighting power. That's not it. The main reason you pick Blue Green FL is because it gives you access to a mechanic that literally shouldn't be in the game. It's actually slightly game breaking in a way. Everything revolves around Infernum Q. You just auto Q, and then with your offhand, you get the Caloran proc and you proc the mark. That's pretty simple. But the thing that makes it so busted is only really available once you have enough attack speed. Take a look at it.
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
I mean, it's alright, like... Oh my god! Wow! That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
It's alright, like... Oh my god! Wow! That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT! Alrighty, Sled, welcome to my room tour.
What a dog.
So first off, we have my disc. I love my disc. It's got all the great music.
Is this Donald Trump?
It's got Captain America, Lady Liberty.
Jesus, I thought I saw the Manberg flag. That's Amsterdam flag, thankfully.
Here's the...
Yep.
We got the little guy on the pillow. I love that guy, my little Shillo big man.
Shillo.
What a great guy. Right here we have the jukebox. Amazing technology.
Okay, that's actually sick.
I love the way they did it. We've got the slug.
I love the way they did it.
Queen Elizabeth II, we love you.
Jack Daniels, you know, love the way they did it.
Alrighty, Sled, welcome to my
Alrighty,
room tour.
what a dog.
So first off...
Come in.
Oh, he's got it.
I'll table.
So needs it. I'm good. It took me a sec.
Open your eyes, Serpent. Look at me. Look at me, Serpent. Keep it clean, turd. 1, 2.
table.
So needs it. I'm good. I'm good. It took me a sec.
Open your eyes. Up. You let it rest.
Oh, we have to close it all the way.
No, I know. Okay. That's up. And this is down. Put your finger and hold it so you don't put pressure. Up. You let it rest.
Oh, would you look at that? And what are you cuties supposed to be?
Ghosts. They're ghosts.
Oh, well, I know, but I was just asking.
Well, they don't talk much. They're shy.
Oh, well, here you go, kids. Happy Halloween!
What do we say?
Trick or treat! Trick or treat! Trick or treat! Trick or treat!
Hey, wait a second! Are those even kids in those costumes? Ugh! Unbelievable!
Give me candy, lady!
Oh, would you look at that? And what are you cuties supposed to be?
Ghosts.
Who are you? Whenever, Paul, you want.
Never forget the time the entire Justice League, Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Green Lantern, everyone decided to surrender themselves to the US government to prove that
I'm building this setup for my dad and my brothers, and why is it better than mine? This is what we got, and you will notice I cable managed. I didn't do it for my setup, but I did it for theirs. Makes no sense. This is my dad's setup. I hooked him up. These are like 100 hertz. That's 240. I got the keyboard, the mouse. He didn't want a PC, so he just connects his stuff through this. This is my younger brother's setup. He refuses to use anything but an Xbox, but I don't want to fight that war anymore.
He does our red into Krags. Level 3. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. Am I gonna go to my camps? No. Another Kag. He just eats me, bro. And then look what happens. I just kill his dog shit top raider right after. And look what my Mundo does. When he knows Shaco is topside. This is what my Mundo does. He does our red into Krags. Level 3. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo.
Democrats, I think we finally have a solution to our party's problems. What is it, Coach? After last night's primary, it looks like 33-year-old Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani will be the next mayor of New York. What now? Well, we've got a new playbook based on his victory. Hold on, not so fast. Who's that? Well, that's the old guard, moderate Democrats who aren't as far left. Let's not throw away the old playbook just yet. You mean the one that handed Trump the election? Ooh. I mean the one that doesn't scare away Americans outside of big coastal cities. Ooh. This could work. Mamdani pledged to ease the cost of living by providing free childcare, freezing rent, and making city buses free. Okay. And he didn't shy away from critiquing the Israeli government. Many of us aren't happy with that. His rhetoric is too extreme. But the establishment candidate underperformed. You can't have a whole new playbook based off of a city. It's different from a state or a national population. What should we do, Coach? Well, we may not agree on rhetoric or policy, but we do agree on one thing. Democrats, I think we finally have a solution to our party's problem. What is it, Coach? After last night's primary, it looks like 33-year-old Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani.
Do I run over this liberal, or do I drive around him? What do you think? I don't know. Think about the gas prices. Yeah, but then I'd have to back up and go around, and it all just kind of feels like a waste of time, doesn't it? I'm not gonna do that. No. Don't feel like it. I'm not gonna do. No. Do I run over this liberal, or do I drive around him? What do you think? I don't know. Think about the gas prices. Yeah, but then I'd have to back up and go around, and It all just kind of feels like a waste of time, doesn't it? I'm not gonna do that. No. Don't feel like it. Don't feel like I'm not gonna do. No. Nuh-uh. Do I run over this liberal or do I drive around him? What do you think? I don't know.
You've got $600 driver's AI switch.
In today's Nordic class, we'll take a look at your underwear. And I am looking for your specific word for bra or brassiere. Denmark, let's start with you for once. Brystholder. Breast holder. That's awfully direct, but also not wrong. Huh. Norway. BH, which stands for brystholder. Right. Denmark, I'll write you up for the short version too. BH. Exactly. Sweden. BH. Did you just make a word out of an acronym? Nay. So that doesn't have a direct meaning. Brysthållare. Actually, I like BH. Fine, I'll let that one slide. Iceland. Brösthaltare. You can even make breast holder sound cute. Amazing. Finland. Rintalivit. Breast vests. Yes, vests for breasts. Finland, that's the best you've gotten today. Well, in today's Nordic...
Yes, Your Honor, we've come to a verdict. We, the people of the jury, find Sean P. Diddy Combs not guilty. Hey, check out my new Lamborghini. Just arrived here at the beach in Dubai. Just stopped by the watch store, picked up the new Rollie. A lot of people are criticizing us for returning a not guilty verdict, but there is no price tag that you can put on doing the right thing. Yes, Your Honor, we've come to a verdict. We the people...
Today we're playing Culinary Rock, Paper, and Scissors, aka Peach.
I held a spelling bee for Twitch chat and they spelled an
Whenever you watch police camera action or see a real police chase, the person trying to get away is always going ludicrously fast. But actually, what's the point? You just panic and have an accident. But if you just do normal speed, you still can't get you out of the car.
I initiated the TGPD anti-terrorism move. Here we go. Pushing. Got him. He's just driven off. We tried many things.
Stop him, Constable! How's that gonna help? This isn't right.
James finally made a mistake.
Oh, crikey, this is a dead end.
Aha! We finally have him. We don't have him, he's closed my door.
But the TGPD toy box wasn't empty yet.
Oh, hello, it looks like Constable Hammond's got the hang of tank driving.
The first thing you need to know is, I have an erection.
Whenever you watch police camera action or see a real police...
So this pattern was unintentionally inappropriate, and you'll see why here in a minute. So I'm starting out with a double cheeked up, too light, too dark pattern, and it's really what I do at the end that's questionable. So as you may know, my whole MO is doing too much in the line. And what I mean by that is I try to do the most crazy stripes that you could possibly think of. Some of them hit, and some of them might not hit. But I like to try to push the envelope when it comes to the designs in the lawn, because really at the end of the day, this is just grass, and it will grow right back. Although, believe it or not, some of the trolls in the comments get so pressed over it. I really think it's because they're scared to try anything new. Watch, that's gonna stir them up. But anyways, if you've been following, you might remember the DNA pattern I did a couple months ago. So this right here is similar but also different at the same time. I would say that there are twice as many waves compared to the other one, and these are offset. It may come across as a little messy from far away, but here in a second you'll see the close-up. So I posted a picture of this on Facebook, and a lot of the guys commented saying, the spot's right here, fellas. I'm not sure what they're talking about. Maybe you can tell me. Let me know in the comments. Follow me for more above average lawn care content. So this pattern was unintentionally.
The case is Shinji in the span of just a few minutes with a couple of great plays. Able to get third of the half. Blue spike. Lotus point hit, forced to flash away. Luger just keeps going. Toro has to be careful. How about this one? Spell immune now. Decent damage. Mitigating what he can. Exhaust going too. Faulty
coming in from Caps. Bit of CC, but doesn't connect the stun. Durley able to find the knockback. Caps is still in the area. Stu-Man immediately going to all try to keep this fight going. Chovy not able to find the point. This Caps flashes out. Genji. Lottery burn. Ruler finally able to get here.
Be the case is Genji and the Smack. Let's give it one more try.
Mess with the bull and you get the bull.
Are boomers ruining the housing market? Oh yeah. You know how old a home buyer was in 2007 in America?
How old?
39 years of age, which means they were born in 1968 when they were buying homes in 2007. Now, if we flash forward to today, to 2025, do you know how old home buyers are in America?
How old are home buyers in America today?
The median age was 56 years old for people buying property in America. Wait, so you're telling me that 17 years has passed since 2007, right? Has it been 17 years since 2000? Yes. And during
In this Nordic class, I'd like to hear your words for chef.
This is dark room. So when you're talking about the insurrection on January 6th, what would you describe during when Kavanaugh was elected to Supreme Court and you had all the protesters at the Capitol, they were banging on the Capitol doors, they were screaming, they were yelling. How do you feel about that?
I would have to know the specifics of the event. I don't recall any proceedings being delayed. I don't recall there being a top-down call from the president to lead these.
You don't remember that they had to stop the congressional meetings because people were banging on the door and being so loud and trying to break into the doors?
Proceedings for. If they did, then it's bad.
Wait.
Just to be clear, this is the difference between me and you, okay? Is that if everything you're telling me is true...
I'm a female. I'm a female.
You're
so that's
Make America Great Again.
I'm a female. Okay. Yeah, I just put it on. I had a cowgirl hat on.
That's the difference that I'm talking about. I don't care you're a woman.
I'm a female and you're a male, and it's almost like you're attacking me because I'm a female. Are you anti-female? Are you anti-female?
Half the time I am, okay? What I'm saying, I'm very honest.
So when you're talking about the insurrection on January...
I face bunch not problems, that's my problem. Mad at myself cause I done hurt my mama. Sad at the fact that I didn't change for dollars. Act like I'm fine when I just drink to hide it. Paint society, I need help, I can't find it. I need time just to find new.
Hey everybody, so do you want to see my oldest video here on YouTube today? Well, check this out. This is just a flashback today. So yeah, this is how far I became today. It's like, wow. Hello everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. So, what is my YouTube channel about? My YouTube channel is about video games. If you like video games, you came to the right place at the right time. So, what games do I play? I like to play...
Can you block a throwing knife with a cape? Back in the day, people would use their cape as an offhand parrying weapon. But that was usually against swords, not throwing knives. So today, we're gonna test two things. First, if you could use the cape to block a throwing knife. And second, if the fabric would even stop the knife. For obvious reasons, we can't test both at the same time. Well, we could. All right, parry this, you casual. Ah! Yeah. No. That one got it. That one got it. 1 out of 4. Trying to do a rap wasn't very effective. What if you just kind of hold it up like a shield? Did I get through? No. Okay. Okay, actually. Trying to accurately parry them with a cloak was kind of difficult. But holding it up as a passive shield worked pretty well. But would it actually stop a knife? So we have our cloak standard and we're gonna see if it'll stop throwing knife. All right, let's huck some steel. It 1000% stopped it. Oh my god! This is a crappy blanket that we got on an international flight. This is an interesting, but not.
This secret exploit means you never have to waste a ban in Arena again. Finding out everyone's banned the same broken champ as you and fucking Belveth has slipped through feels awful. But you don't actually have to do that. The client secretly tells you when someone's already banned the champ you don't want in the game. If you click on the champ you want to get rid of and wait, when someone else in the lobby that's not on your team bans it, it'll just deselect itself. It's still possible to ban that champ, which is why it's super important to hover the ban as quickly as you can. Otherwise, you'll never know if it's been forbidden or not. This secret exploit means you never have to waste a ban in Arena again. Finding out
But around 2005 to 2010, consoles started using these buttons that you just touch to operate. The 360 Slim had them with both the power and the eject buttons. And the first generation PlayStation 3 had them as well. You don't really push these buttons, they're just very sensitive to your touch. The reason I didn't like these touch buttons is because they're too sensitive. I'd often accidentally push them. And it seemed like these touch buttons were just a phase. With the redesigned PlayStation 3, Sony went back with the physical buttons that you can actually push. But around 2005 to 2010, consoles started using these buttons that you just touch to operate. The 360 Slim had them with both the power and the eject buttons. And the first generation PlayStation 3 had them as well. You don't really push these buttons, they're just very sensitive to your touch. The reason I didn't like these touch buttons is because they're too sensitive. I'd often accidentally push them. And it seemed like these touch buttons were just a phase. With the redesigned PlayStation 3, Sony went back with the physical buttons that you can actually push. But around 2005 to 2010, consoles started using these buttons that you just touch to operate.
My husband and I drove through the never-ending fields of Vestjylland, Denmark just to find funny city or street signs. Enjoy. The very first stop on our journey was of course Ølgod, or beer, good, which led us straight to Tarm, or intestine. And moving further north we hit Lem, which does mean hatch. But it also has another much more widely accepted translation, which is penis, so we're going with that. Fed and fully hydrated we reached Udsigten, or the view, which was very close to Røyenvej, Smoking Road. Then we ventured to Ølstrup, Beerville, where we took a detour and ran into Tim, and on our way to an Aftenvej, Evil Evening Street. We had some trouble finding Klitvej, which either translates to Dune Street, or much more importantly, Klit Street. And after that we searched for Nicholas in Bur, or Cage. And remember, if you're ever going to Paris, please specify which one. On our way back we found Brasholmvej, Junk Islet Street, which then concluded our trip at this happy location, Ølby, Beer Town.
Wait, where'd you say you have them all?
The lip.
Of what? The lip of what?
What do you think?
Oh.
No, the other lip. Do you know what? The lip.
I feel like I would have felt it.
It's not protruding. It's just there. It's just a small. You don't look at details, do you?
Well, usually when the bag's over my head, I don't really get to see much. Wait, where'd you say you have them all?
The lip.
Of what?
Creepers are such a hilariously awful concept to put in.
Imagine you have something open on your computer and you need to close it very quickly. This Alt-Tab Control-Delete takes too long. Introducing the foot pedal. There was a lot of weird off-brand foot pedals back in the day, but I never knew that Elgato made one. All right, feels pretty good. Wait, it's 3 separate buttons. So on this right one, I could set it to close Google. This left one should open DoorDash. Nice. And when I press the middle one, it automatically types in my password so I don't have to type it out myself. That's not my password. Imagine you have something open on your computer and you need to close it very quickly. This Alt-Tab Control-Delete takes too long. Introducing the foot pedal. There was a lot of weird off-brand foot pedals back in the day, but I never knew that Elgato made one. All right, feels pretty good. Wait.
Bro, my kid just got this for their birthday. Tell me you don't remember this.
Successfully.
In today's Nordic class, I'd like to hear your...
Gragas versus Briar Bombamentals. When Briar hits you with her ult, you can body slam into her while she's flying at you. She is unstoppable, but she will still be stunned after landing, leaving her vulnerable for a combo. Gragas E cancels Briar's Q jump completely. You won't even get stunned. Gragas can buffer his W auto attack versus Briar's Q. Your auto attack will go through while you're stunned. Briar's berserk auto attacks are unstoppable, so if Gragas directly body slams into her, she will get 1 auto off. Briar can buff.
back to a series so magical, Disney tried to copyright it. In today's video, Ludwig has responded again on his stream. Tectone has called out Ludwig once again. Pokimane is back with some of the dumbest takes known to man. Subscribe to convert everybody you know into a Pegasus fan. And let's begin with supreme ruler of all jellyfish, Ludwig. Basically, last time we talked about Ludwig, he was responding to the whole Berio Kart situation, where Ludwig invited his alcoholic friend Mango to his party, cheered him on to drink to dangerous levels of alcohol, then banned him from his events when he got backlash, and said he didn't feel guilty about doing that.
I feel zero guilt. I don't feel guilty at all.
Now, last time we talked about his response, basically saying that it doesn't matter because drama YouTubers don't actually care or know Mango personally. It was just a bunch of bad arguments. He also said it shouldn't matter because the earth is spinning and we eventually die. Unironically, that was his response. But don't worry, he made another response today, and honestly, it was much better. So he starts by telling his mods not to ban people mentioning the drama now.
Mods, you can chill on the bans today. I think if somebody comes in with a first-time chatter and saying get those number up, I think it's fine. I think I'm okay eating that. I ultimately had very embarrassing clips in moments, and on hindsight, it looks really bad. And I apologize for it, and I've apologized for it. But if someone wants to come in and they feel like a little bit good about themselves by putting me down, I think it's a fair punishment. Because there's not, that's fine. I'm okay doing it. That's okay. Drama frogs suck. Yeah, but we all are drama frogs. And to varying degrees.
Right, so obviously people are trolling him about the let's get those numbers up.
Hey, yo, there's 1.32! Let's up those numbers!
That is a diabolical clip, and it's now an internet meme, so he's got to deal with that. But honestly, he's being a good sport about the situation, but the entire reason people were mad was that his initial response did not feel authentic. It felt like he was throwing his friend under the bus. He said like, oh, in hindsight, it was in poor taste and cringe, but he didn't really like treat it like the serious situation it was. But towards the end of this stream, he actually did deliver a better response. Here's what he said.
I'm bummed at how he's handling the current situation. I don't actually really understand how I can handle it better. I honestly think the biggest mistake I made is I said, if someone asked me if I feel guilty, and I said no. And I think that was my biggest mistake was saying that. And I do regret saying that. And I was thinking, do I feel guilty about banning? But I feel guilty about the situation. I think that was honestly like my biggest fuck up.
Right, so the biggest F up was the situation itself, obviously. Now, saying that he didn't feel guilty was obviously not received well, but him saying that he regrets it now is obviously the right move. I think people just wanted a more sort of explicit response, like maybe a tweet or a separate video, maybe a more heartfelt apology for inviting him in the first place. And of course, not cutting him off from alcohol and being a responsible host and stuff. By the way, his mods did not listen. W Tectone was instantly wiped out. Just saying, you are allowed to type W Ludwig in my comment section, in Tectone's chat, in Asmon's chat. I don't think anybody's gonna ban you for that. I just find it funny. You just gotta create the echo chamber. But he specifically said not to, so I don't know why they're still doing it. Then he just says that he's not going to try and appease people.
But I like, there's no point, I think, in like trying to appease people who aren't even in the situation. It don't really help me. It doesn't even help them. Like, I'm thinking about it from my perspective. When I get mad at someone because I'm into some drama, there's really no apology you can do. I just want to be fucking mad at him for a while and chat shit on him. So I think it's the same here. But, I think however people feel is fine. Drama features are annoying. I think it's fine. I think it's like, I totally understand. I understand why it exists, and I understand why people watch it. And I have no, oh my God, this is nasty. I have no desire to, I don't know, like be viewed in a more positive light, if that makes sense. I've been really back on my stoicism arc. I also think on the flip side, you do not have to be in it for the long haul. I think you should just be in it if you think what I make is something that like appeals to you, And if that ever switches, then you should not watch. I think it's fine.
Right, so, he's allowed to do what he wants, of course. If you don't know what stoicism is, it's kind of like focusing on things you can control and ignoring things you can't. It's actually a very good life principle to follow and will really help you out in life. And basically, he's saying that he believes the internet's response is out of his control. I think different, but that's fine. He's allowed to have his opinion. I feel like depending on your response, the internet obviously responds, right? Now, some people will hate you no matter what, and yeah, that that is kind of out of your control. Now, Cheddar calls him out, saying what we all have been saying. Why can't you just say, I wish I didn't have Mango at the event? And Ludwig basically implies that it was fine to have him at the event, but he should have cut him off from alcohol, which is, I guess, one way to deal with it.
I'm not rage baiting. I just wish he would say he shouldn't have had Mango at the event. I think we should have cut off Mango way earlier. I think I shouldn't have done the breathalyzers. I was dumb. I don't think the breathalyzers were legitimate. I think people who like saying 0.32 is near death are not being very genuine, because it's just not. Doug literally said in the clip about breathalyzers, so I think that's like, I don't feel like it's very sincere when people say that, but it still is dumb to have, and it was dumb to like cheer being more dumb. I regret that. I don't know. I had him at 2 other Burial Card events and there's no problem. So it's, I think I just didn't realize how bad it was. I wish I had realized. I just didn't, and I don't know how I would have. I think I might have just been too ignorant.
Right. So this is definitely a better response than last time. You know, he does take some level of accountability here. He says it was dumb to cheer him on. He regrets his actions. I think the problem here is that he really thinks that Mango can control himself when he absolutely cannot. I guess he thought Mango had no problem because he had him at older events and it was fine then. And that sort of might have given him the confidence to keep doing this. Of course, ended up being a horrible decision, but recognizing that it was an ignorant thing to think is definitely good. Now, as for the breathalyzers not being accurate, I don't think that's a very good defense. It's still super high levels, and we don't really know the actual levels. So I think it's always better to be on the safer side. Then he talks about how Mango's career is not over.
But I also think some people talk about Mango like he's dead. He's gonna be back. Like, I really hope his sobriety goes well. He's gonna be back. He's gonna be better than ever. I truly think that. Like, I really, truly believe that. He'll be healthier. He'll be happier. Like, I truly think, you know, he's sober for like years. He'll be leading such a better life. People talk about him like his career is over and his life is over. It's just not true. But, you know, that's the time will tell. And time will prove it.
Right, so again, I don't know much about this Mango guy, but being dropped from your 10-year org is pretty bad, I feel like. And of course, it sort of looked like, you know, you dropped him too from the events and everybody's dropping him. And everybody thinks he's a horrible person because of the harassment, which was, again, unacceptable. But it was brought about by the circumstances of this event. Now, again, he is his own man, but of course, his friend cheering him on to drink more alcohol doesn't help. And Ludwig has apologized for that, so, you know, that's good. But in my opinion, alright, he doesn't have to follow that. I think you should just bite the bullet and be like, yeah, Mango, I f***ed up. You deserve better. Get another friend. Now, it seems Mango wants to continue being friends with Ludwig. I personally wouldn't recommend. Honestly, if somebody did this shit to me, I would cut him off ASAP. But yeah, you can see that Ludwig definitely seems to feel bad about it. I don't know if he feels bad because everybody's criticizing him on the internet, or he feels bad for what he actually did. Maybe a little bit of both. I honestly think just like a dedicated response would have been much better received. But Ludwig has said like 3 times he doesn't believe that's the right thing to do here, and he doesn't want to like appease other people. But anyways, if you remember, Ludwig also brought up Tectone in one of his responses. So Tectone, naturally, being the streamer he is, he responded, Ludwig has now tried to slander my name to score a W 3 times now in the past 48 hours. After directly expressing he'd rather neck himself than watch one of my videos, he proceeded to watch both. To be honest, I'm glad I've kept him busy. Maybe he'll cancel that kegger he was planning on hosting at the local Alcoholics Anonymous. Alright, to be fair, I think this is a misunderstanding here. I don't think Ludwig actually meant that. I think he said that he would be happy dying, never watched a Tectone video. That's a little bit different.
Enable game chat. It's actually one of my greatest pleasures that I get to die never having to speak to these people. It's like a Tectone video. I can die never watching one.
But anyways, Ludwig does keep bringing him up for some reason. His chat does hate him. You kind of get insta-banned when you mention Tectone.
Ludwig, for some reason, can't keep my name out of his mouth. And he's now trying to paint me as a disingenuous content creator. But if there's one thing I'm not going to tolerate, it's being called disingenuous when my entire fucking shtick is being as genuine as fucking possible. I've gotten into so much shit because I tell the truth, even out of fault, even when it makes me look like shit. No one is causing this guy's misfortune rather than his own stubbornness and the ability to not take accountability for anything.
Okay, I will say if I had to pick between who is more authentic between Ludwig and Tectone, I think it's an absolute sweep. You may not like Tectone or some of the things he says, but you can't say he's not saying what he thinks. Often to his own detriment, he will literally just say whatever is on his mind. And not gonna lie, Ludwig's reputation is the exact opposite. He's the Albert Einstein of, how do I make people like me? And not gonna lie, Ludwig's manner of speaking is like, let me run it through 500 filters in my head, and then let me ask Hassan if I can say this, and then it goes out to the public. Then he talks about how nobody actually wants to cancel Ludwig.
There are going to be a lot more drama heads today, okay? I won't lie about it. It is what it is. But
do you want to know why this drama is happening, Ludwig? Because you can't just say that you f***ed up and you're sorry. And it's really not that hard. Nobody wants to cancel your career. We just want to see some fucking accountability. Let me rephrase that. I don't care. Listen, Ludwig, you at your worst, you're a disingenuous piece of shit bad friend, right? That's it at your worst. I just want you to fucking shut up and try to stop painting me in a bad light because you're upset because I'm telling the truth about you.
So I think one of the reasons the situation got so big is because of the ego aspect. I feel like he was a bit condescending, all right? Like, all these drama channels are calling me out. They don't actually care about anything. They just do it for money. Oh, Textone message Mango. He doesn't care. He's disingenuous. When people were actually, like, rightfully calling you out. So it would have been much more simple to handle this in, like, a, you know, a genuine, serious response. But let me just say the quiet part out loud. The fact is, a lot of Ludwig's fanbase is actually just unaware of the drama, right? And if you make a dedicated video about the situation, everybody is now aware of the drama. And that is the only reason why there is no dedicated video about it. It has nothing to do with, you know, whether he's in the right or the wrong or taking accountability or anything like that. It's just, you know, I don't want the rest of my fan base to know about this shit. Or possibly, maybe the rest of my friends to know about this shit, who he might respect. The fact of the matter is, what he did was dangerously negligent. And, you know, we talked about the hypotheticals of what could have happened if something else happened on that day, and, you know, Ludwig might have been even criminally liable.
in this world, we can only control the things we can control, and I can't control my reputation. I can't control the way people...
Yes, you can, brother. But Ludwig, your problem is you only talk about things and apologize for things once they become mainstream. But if you can skirt by before anybody talks about it, you have zero accountability. You can't control your reputation to a certain degree. Now, I understand some people will hate to hate, but to say that in totality that you can't control anything, it's just a lie.
I think he did pull like a pirate software where he just sort of doubled down over and over instead of giving an inch. And I have another theory as to why he's being so sort of wishy-washy about it. I think he's legit afraid of admitting what happened and confronting what happened. Because as some people pointed out, that shit is borderline evil, especially if he was aware of the dangers. Now you can say you regret it and all of that, but obviously that doesn't wipe away the actions. That's why the language around the situation is, you know, that was pretty cringe, that was pretty dumb. Not like that was dangerously sociopathic or something. Then he talks about Mango asking him not to speak about it, and I found it very odd. Tectone did not buy it at all.
To not speak on it.
You're full of shit. You are absolutely full of shit. There is no way Mango reached out to you and said, don't talk about it at all, and don't take any accountability, and make sure to double down that you feel no guilt. Because here's the thing, you said that Mango said that he reached out to you, and he said don't talk about it. That's crazy after you've already talked about it 3 times, said that you're doubling down and you feel no guilt and you have no regrets. So full of shit, it's insane. Jesus Christ.
Right, so we don't really have any way to verify what happened there. I mean, I don't think he would lie about it. That would be really bad, of course. But I think Mango is just still trying to be a good friend. Like, you know, I don't want Ludwig to get any heat for this, which is crazy. You know, the fact that they're still friends after this is insane. Ludwig did say that they are still on good terms. I would still advise Mango to ditch the jellyfish. You know, he did apologize and all that, but I don't know. That's like a severe mistake. Like, imagine if someone did that to you, dude. Honestly, if my friend encouraged me to keep drinking after I blew a .32, even if, you know, it might have been slightly lower or whatever, I would be concerned. I'd be like, this guy's dangerously stupid, or he wants to kill me. I have no idea. Either way, I just would not want that guy to be my friend at all. Not to mention, Ludwig is the guy who put you in the scenario in the first place, in the whole party environment with alcohol. I feel like, you know, people need to stand up for themselves, you know, stop tolerating bullshit in your life and actually just cut off toxic people. And unfortunately, in this scenario, Ludwig does fall into that category. He might be a nice guy all around, but, you know, this is one of those irreversible sort of mistakes. At least like personal friendship wise. Obviously, you know, in the face of the internet, obviously your reputation can be repaired. You know, one mistake doesn't define you. But as a personal friend, heck no, you're completely out of my life, you know? Then Tectone talks about having some basic empathy. This was a really dumb point by Ludwig.
I don't think they'll be in his stream when he's back to streaming in a month or whenever it is.
It doesn't matter if people care about Mango or not. It doesn't matter if they're going to be in a stream or not. That's not how you judge someone's loyalty or their credibility or their kinship for one person. Having a general worry for people just because they're a common human is pretty much it. I don't need to see someone dying on the street to want to help them, but I won't help them unless they're my friend. If someone's injured in the street, I will make sure to call an ambulance for them and make sure they're taken care of, and then I will continue upon my day. That doesn't mean that I'm going to send them letters and now become best friends with them. It's just common empathy for another human. And I don't get how shit of a take it is saying, all these people who are pretending to care about Mango, they don't actually